Yo, it's finally time, ladies and gentlemen. It's time we discuss the third build content creator on thatguywiththeglasses.com's website, the one and only hater of bad comic books himself, Linkara. Now, if you somehow missed it, I went on a year-long side quest, I'll call it, where I made these two enormous videos covering Lewis's work before he ever became a creator on thatguywiththeglasses.com, including his 4-book novel series that previously no one had ever even attempted to cover in full here on YouTube, or anywhere else for that matter, as well as a retrospective on the entirety of his infamous Lightbringer comic book series. While it's not as important for this larger retrospective on Channel Awesome, it is important if you want to know more about Lewis as a creator and what eventually brought him to making video content to begin with. So again, if you've not seen those and want to know more about that stuff, you can go and watch them. Links will be provided in the description down below. That being said, today we'll be covering Linkara's, or Lewis Lovehog's, series that he's most well known for, Atop the Fourth Wall. We'll be covering his reviewing style, what made his show so popular, and how it was even rather innovative in quite a few ways for online content. And we will be covering the various story arcs on his show, up until we get to the Atop the Fourth Wall movie, because sadly we will not be able to cover anything else in that for now, because we'll first be required to talk about the other 3 Channel Awesome films first, since the Atop the Fourth Wall movie is canon to those. I wanted to explain all this now so that you can kind of know what you're getting into today, since I know many of you will be wondering why we're stopping at a certain point. Though, being fair, that we'll still be covering 8 seasons worth of Linkara's ongoing story, so I think you'll get a very good taste for his writing style and the overall concepts there within. We'll also be talking about his Power Rangers retrospective to some degree, and any other odds and ends that Lewis has made over the years, be they miniseries, or his more recent-ish ARG series, Winter of '83. As far as I'm aware, it can be enjoyed as a standalone thing. Also, throughout the video, you will see this Copyright Owl logo pop up a fair bit, and the audio for some of these videos may on occasion be slightly higher or lower in octave. This is done because the Atop the Fourth Wall show is heavily copyright claimed here on YouTube in the testing that I've done, so this will be done to avoid that issue so this video can stay up, since I'm more than showcasing everything under fair use here, and do advocate going and watching his series for yourself if you want the full context to all these things. But enough preamble. This is part 3 of the Channel Awesome retrospective. So let's dive into some comic books. So, as noted before, Linkara, or Lewis Lovehog, was born August 19th of 1987, and after his arcs of writing a 4-book fantasy series by the name of Angel Armor, and trying his hand at a webcomic by the title of The Lightbringer, Lewis would try his hand at reviewing comic books. This would start initially not as the video series we all know, but through text recaps. According to Lewis, he first came up with the idea to review comic books this way after discovering sites like Jabotu and The Angry Booth, both of which were sites that would recap and review really bad movies and TV shows. Basically, imagine a Nostalgia Critic video, but in text form. Since Lewis was very passionate about comic books though, he was inspired to basically do the exact same thing, but with those. He would end up making 17 of these text recaps, all posted to his blog atop the fourth wall. However, this endeavor would be short-lived. But the idea he had there, it was solid, but it wouldn't fully form until another spark of inspiration came Lewis's way. Enter thatguywiththeglasses.com, a website that Lewis also discovered and subsequently fell in love with the content being made there, which leads to episode 30 of Ask That Guy with the Glasses, where the devilishly evil character played by Doug Walker proposes a little competition. Basically, That Guy with the Glasses gave several questions that was up for once other individuals to answer, to see who could come up with the funniest answers.
Stop it! Stop asking me questions! Can't you people figure out your own answers? You know what? I'm done. I've been doing this 30 episodes answering your stupid questions. I think it's time we turn the tables around. So this time around, That Guy with the Glasses is asking you the questions. Simply make a video, post it on Rever or YouTube or whatever, and send us a link answering the questions that I ask you. What are these questions? Take a look.
What killed the dinosaurs? How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? If a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Can you tell me how to get back onto the freeway? What would you do for a Klondike bar?
There you go, that's 5 questions for you. You can answer either one or all 5. The deadline is October 21st at midnight Central Time. Let's see how you like the tables turned, you scum-sucking son of a... This is That Guy with the Glasses saying there's no such thing as a stupid question until you answer it. Get to it.
And so many people did indeed submit their answers.
What killed the dinosaurs?
Jesus did.
Sarah Palin.
The Terminator.
My ass.
It's the Flintstones.
It
was the Power Rangers.
The Ice Age!
Transformers.
Are you accusing me?
I'm not a doctor!
Bob Dole's very first speech.
You killed the dinosaurs. How terrible do you feel? Do you feel terrible? Good. Because you killed the dinosaurs, you bastard.
If a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Of course not. Trees can't talk.
Of course it makes a sound. It cries. Because nobody likes him.
Not so much the tree, but the woodchuck it lands on makes a pretty pathetic cry for mercy.
If there's no one there to hear it, there's no one there to care whether or not it makes a sound.
That's actually my girlfriend's ringtone.
Well, I don't know. Let's ask the tree.
No.
There you go.
Trees say...
Yes. And that word is...
I will have your souls.
It depends on what you mean by no one. If there is a complete absence of any living organisms in the area, then no, it does not make a sound. However, being that the tree is in the woods, there's a whole menagerie of potential listeners. The rabbits, the deer, the birds, the mice, the wild boar, the bears, the worms, the beetles, the butterflies. Which would end up being in the next episode. And notably, this is where our fedoraed friend, or, well, technically, he wears a trilby, so, our trilbied titan shows up, deciding to give it a shot, with this being the first video he would ever make. And it still being the first one that you can find over on his original YouTube channel.
Oh, Joe on True. Hello and welcome to Ask That Guy with the Hat.
That guy with the glasses asks, what killed the dinosaurs?
That's a very good question. I killed the dinosaurs. I stole a time machine from this British guy with a long scarf, went back in time, killed the dinosaurs, skinned them, and turned them into underpants. I'm wearing the underpants right now. Yes.
That guy with the glasses also asks, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Sumo wrestlers, of course.
The answer is 6. I just don't want the woodchucks to hear.
After enjoying the experience of filming it all and making jokes, Lewis had a little eureka moment. He realized that he could actually do the same thing with his comic book reviews. Makes sense too, since these recap reviews were basically what Doug was doing anyway with his Nostalgia Critic reviews. But Lewis would be breaking new ground in covering comics instead of movies or games. And according to the thatguywiththeglasses.com fandom wiki, quote, as a special Halloween treat, Lewis did a 3-part comic review and recap, the first he had done in quite a while. The first 2 parts were text recaps of Web of Spider-Man number 122 and Amazing Spider-Man number 399, covering a small part of what is known in comics as the Spider-Man Clone Saga. The third recap of Spider-Man number 56 covered the final part of the storyline, but was done as a video review. Because of how much fun he had with the concept, Lewis was inspired to do more video recaps, unquote. And so, the Atop the Fourth Wall video series was born. So, why don't we take a quick little peek at that first comic book review of his.
Happy Halloween, everyone! I decided that for this recap, the only way to do it justice was by video. Plus, I wanted to experiment around with a different format than just the text recaps. As such, let's dig into Adjectiveless Spider-Man number 56, part 3 of Smoke and Mirrors.
So right off the bat, we see Lewis, or Linkara, in his first iconic outfit of the series. A brown trilby hat and matching jacket, a black undershirt, and a brown striped collar shirt, and his glasses, of course. This ensemble would be his signature look for some time. Just as Doug Walker's character, or James's angry video game nerd, Lewis opted for an outfit to better distinguish himself from his character. Though unlike Doug Walker or James Rolfe, this outfit doesn't seem too far off of what his normal fashion choices might have been. Lewis goes on to review this Spider-Man comic and basically makes a few jokes, points out plot issues and plot holes, and continuity errors, and generally does what you would expect from this type of review.
Honestly, I don't get how anyone could have bought into this, be they Spider-Man or fans. Right as she comes out, she asks, Spider-Man? Peter? What's happened to me? Gwen never found out Peter was Spider-Man. Never!
Now, I'll make this perfectly clear before we keep going, but when it comes to Western comic books, in particular superhero stuff from either Marvel or DC, I am straight up just not that familiar with them. I recognize the characters and villains, especially some of the most iconic ones, but on the whole I'd say my knowledge of superhero stuff comes more from watching some of the cartoons and movies over the years, not really from any of the comics or original sources themselves. I say all this because usually I have more opinions or thoughts to share on the works these people are covering. With Doug Walker and Nostalgia Chick, it was easy because they covered a lot of films I either enjoyed, animated stuff that I'm passionate about, or just covered things that I am more familiar with in general. But this time I'm afraid I won't be able to provide much extra commentary on the actual comics he's reviewing, whether or not his takes are based or cringe or whatever. When it comes to comics, I'm much more of a manga guy, with the occasional graphic novel thrown in here or there. But I will try and look for some stuff that I'm more familiar with that he's reviewed later on in this video, just for the sake of giving more thoughts on his actual takes. But on a more objective level, these reviews would be structured in a very similar way to Doug's Nostalgia Critic reviews, with recapping, stopping to point out flaws, etc. And as I said before, it's a great format, meaning that even if you're not familiar with the source material, you can still get a good idea of what it's like mixed with the commentary. In a way, a lot of these movie, comic, video game reviews, I kind of see them as a more elaborate version of show and tell. The reviewers showcasing the plot and basic ideas of the thing, so they can then point out the flaws and make jokes at its expense. Lewis would do a few more of these, covering Dooms 4, Batman 147, and Titans 31. And with those videos there as a proof of concept, he would then reach out via email to Mike Michaud, asking if the site, That Guy with the Glasses, would be interested in hosting his comic book review show, since there was a talent hunt going on at the time, such as the earlier discussed Nostalgia Chick contest. After a bit of back and forth, the show, Atop the Fourth Wall, was given a trial run on the site with a few episodes, those being Lewis's top 15 what the fuck moments in bad comics, and then his review of the comic book US 1. These videos would prove to be very popular, them getting an overwhelmingly positive response from the community, and thus the show and Linkara would become part of the site's team, and as noted before, was one of the top billed people on the site, right next to Doug, Nostalgia Chick, and Spoony. Linkara would become one of the main faces of thatguywiththeglasses.com and the later Channel Awesome rebrand in general, and if you recall, was right there amongst the other characters in the thatguywiththeglasses.com year 1 anniversary. Though to be fair, Lewis would prove to have quite a penchant for crossovers and stuff, but we'll get to all that shortly. However, before we go any further, Lewis also made this video entitled An Introduction to Atop the Fourth Wall, which I think gives some context to where his head was at, his plans for the show, and it's just like historical shit, so let's just go ahead and see some of it, shall we?
Greetings, my friends. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And remember, my friends, future events such as these will affect you in the future. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here. And now, for the first time, we are bringing to you the full story of what happened on those fateful days. We are giving you all the evidence based only on the secret testimony of that miserable soul who survived this terrifying ordeal. The incidents, the places. My friends, we cannot keep this a secret any longer. Let us punish the guilty. Let us reward the innocent. My friends, can your hearts stand the shocking facts behind the worst comics ever made? Hi, everybody! Well, now that I'm officially a part of the team here at thatguywiththeglasses.com, I guess it's time to tell you a little bit about myself and what I do here. First, let me show you around. This is the futon. Right, tour's over. Now get out before I shoot you. Oh, fine, here's what I do. I find the worst comic books, the worst graphic novels, the worst pieces of sequential art ever to be printed, and I rip them up, and I set them on fire, and I stomp on them till they're dead!
What are you looking for in a bad comic?
That's a very good question. I'm looking for plot holes. I'm looking for bizarre character motivations. I'm looking for terrible artwork. I'm looking for the bland, the bizarre, the ludicrous, the lazy, the insipid, the surreal. If a character suddenly starts humping another, I'll be there. If a man is powered by cocaine, I'll be there. If a basketball player challenges a giant lizard to a fight, I'll be there. Bring them all on.
Aren't you just like the nostalgia critic or the angry video game nerd?
No, you idiot. I review comic books, not old TV shows and movies or video games. Subsequently, you can look forward to my upcoming review of the World of Warcraft comic. Wait.
When will you do a manga?
When I finally find a manga that sucks enough.
So that's the idea. Guy reviews comics, looks at all the bad ones, etc. The main thing I actually want to focus on with Linkara's content though is less his actual reviews, again we'll get to some of those later, but instead something that I really think is much more unique to him over almost any other content creator on thatguywiththeglasses.com. Or, if I'm being frank, on YouTube either back in the day and in some cases even now. That unique trait being ongoing story arcs. See, while many people I've covered thus far on my channel have had skits, storylines to their game or movie reviews that can either add a lot to the video or be a bad distraction depending on the quality of said skits, Linkara took it several steps further, as while yes, he did have the occasional one-off skit too, pretty early on, starting with his Godzilla vs. Barkley comic review, Lewis would start to have continuity in these skits, starting with reoccurring characters and plot points between both his videos and other creators on the site, namely Spoony in the beginning, to overarching plot points villains that were conspiring against Linkara, with these plot points often showing up at the start or very end of these normal comic book reviews, essentially rewarding viewers who kept up with every comic book review with the next part of this story. As for the quality of these stories, well, that's for us to discover here today. As well, before, if you wanted to keep up with his story, you just had to watch every video he made or dig around for the important bits. But now Linkara has made it extra easy for newcomers to get into the story with this handy dandy playlist he made that features all the plot relevant scenes in the series, and breaks them up by videos into story arcs, much like a comic book series, which I think is pretty neat. And looking at the runtimes of these, we're in for a lot of story, fellas. So get comfy, my friends, and let's dive deep into the story, the lore, the legacy of Linkara's Atop the Fourth Wall. So to start, there's an author's note in this first video that says these story bits were never meant to be watched all as one continuous narrative, and thus the jumping between episodes and stuff will sometimes be jarring. It should also be known that while Lewis was pretty innovative in this concept of making an ongoing narrative for his review web series, it's clear he didn't quite intend for it to be anything crazy enormous at first, and thus didn't have a clear plot in mind early on. This story arc is entitled His Heart is Steel, and starts with our hero mocking an element of the Godzilla vs. Barkley comic, that being a magic coin that makes you grow in size, being how they explain a basketball player fighting a fucking kaiju. And so Lewis decides to pick up a random magic coin and uses it to become huge, complete with a Dr. Horrible sing-along blog reference.
Whoa! Hey, it worked! I'm huge! Oh, hey guys, check this out! It's a brand new day, and the sun is high. All the angels sing because you're gonna die.
Which is pretty based. We then get a few random skits, like Lewis fighting a sentient comic, it being a Star Trek comic, which is actually the first time we see him use his iconic magic gun.
But how? You have to explain it!
Explain it? It's magic. I don't have to explain it.
Which for now seems like it was just used as a random joke, a jab at the comic, but will become an extremely important plot detail later. Then in his Neutro 1 comic book review, he is set off on a rant that leads into our first ever crossover in the series, and an important one at that. That being from Spoony, or his character, Dr. Insano, who also seems to be dressed kind of as a reference to Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. I suppose they were both pretty big fans.
Hell? My God, it's Neutro!
Well, Linkara, what do you think of my latest acquisition?
Becoming President of the United States could never be enough for you!
Of course!
Though, technically, this wasn't the first appearance of Dr. Insano. The Dr. Insano was first set up as Linkara's arch-nemesis of sorts during Linkara's Uncanny X-Men 424 video review, which came directly after the Godzilla vs. Barkley video, and was part of this long skit Lewis had called Last Time Atop the Fourth Wall, where a bunch of stuff is shown that obviously did not happen in the last episode.
Damn you, Phantasm! You know I can't release issue 2 of Revolution of the Mask until issue 1 sales improve!
Soon, the world will tremble at the mere mention of the name Dr. Insano. Not even Linkara can stop me now.
This character would then show up in Spoony's multi-part Final Fantasy VIII review and mock Spoony as he has become president of the United States and... Look, we don't need to get lost too far in the weeds of the Spoony lore right now. He's next for us to talk about after all. But basically, this character from the start, like many things on Channel Awesome, and Linkara series especially, started as a one-off gag that would eventually balloon into a full-blown character with lore and repeat appearances, and would be integrated into the stories across the website, which I think is pretty fucking cool. Anyway, Dr. Insano is attacking the city in the Neutro Robot, so Linkara uses his magic coin to grow, spouts his catchphrase,
All right, Neutro, you may be a gigantic machine of mass destruction, but I am a man! Ow! Son of a bitch, that hurt!
and then defeats Dr. Insano with his magic gun. Oh, and in case you didn't know, this was the first of Linkara's ongoing gags and memes. This catchphrase, I am a man, which he first did in the Superman at Ends Earth video.
Reality is, you are an android. I am a man! I am a man!
Sweet merciful crap! Superman just punched that android's guts out! Let this be a lesson, kids. When debating, solve your disagreement not with words, but by screaming, I am a man! And punching them in the gut. Allow me to demonstrate. I am a man!
Yes, even if you're a woman, you should shout that you are a man. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
And would become synonymous with him in the early history of the website. Next in this arc, we have a video where Linkara has his robot Puyo, who is a cardboard box robot, finish his review for him. But then it malfunctions, with the joke being that not even a robot can handle this bad comic. Now, this may seem like a random detail or just a, well, random one-off joke yet again, but once again, this character, this robot Puyo, will become one of the most prevalent and important characters in the Atop the Fourth Wall series, essentially acting as Linkara's sidekick of sorts. Then at a later point, Linkara and Spoony collab again, with Spoony doing a comic book review and Linkara doing a video game review, eventually leading to Linkara going into a crazed rage or
Adamantium rage! Adamantium rage! Oh! Adamantium rage! Adamantium rage! Adamantium rage! Adamantium rage! Adamantium rage!
which leads to him screaming in none other than the angry video game nerd's face, which leads to him punching him in his fucking face. This then leads into Linkara facing Dr. Insano, and him realizing that Insano looks a lot like someone else he knows.
Science!
Finally come to confront me in the flesh, eh? Oh my god! You're Bennett the Sage!
Well done, Linkara, you finally No!
Oh wait, I know this one! You're that chick with the goggles!
But I'm not freaking black!
But you are a woman, eh?
Yes, no! Screw this!
At any rate, Dr. Insano then uses his lightning powers that he has for some reason, but he is then quickly defeated by our brave hero. However, this then leads into the next video, as Insano had one more trick up his sleeve. He has a device that, like, messes with hyper time something or whatever. Basically, this whole review, there's a skit where Linkara and Spoony are changing places and transforming into different alternate universe versions of themselves. And it's honestly a pretty funny skit. Spoony has a great screen presence, and these two work very well off of each other, with them both pretty easily jumping between jokes and having a ton of energy.
Hyper time! Now all your continuities belong to me!
You fool! You can't just go ripping holes in hyper time. Like, you'll create all sorts of splinter dimensions and unstable parallel tangent universes. Who knows what kind of horrible crossovers you're bound to cause? It'll be worse than the amalgam universe.
Oh, boo-hoo! Dr. Insano is causing a crisis on Infinite Earths. It's all the means to your end. You dare mock my greatest discovery? No man can withstand this comic. But if you can, I'll leave and fix your stupid reality.
But the only other way out of here is your suicide pistol and oblivion! Behold your doom! The comic from parts unknown called Warrior!
Oh, come on, it's just a comic.
I really love it. And what makes it all the better is it seems to have been done all while they were at some convention together. And instead of just kind of, you know, enjoying the con, they utilized this time perfectly to make some banger videos. Gotta respect that grind. And again, very high effort ones for the time being at that. It's great stuff. It ends with several other That Guy with the Glasses creators running into the room and beating the shit out of Dr. Insano. To, teach him a lesson, I suppose. Then for our next little plot beat, we have Linkara's video being messed with because the residual hypertime thing is being messed with, and so we see Linkara from the future, played by none other than Lewis's dad. Future Linkara starts a review of a comic book before he is then met with his current self. It's a fun little back and forth, with Linkara realizing that in 30 years' time, at least with his current timeline, he will not only not have moved out of his parents' house, but he will also have gotten an inferior hat. And so he decides he's gonna change things, and make sure that he doesn't end up with this bleak future. We then cut to Dr. Insano getting ready to threaten Linkara again, when he is suddenly met by someone else.
Wait a minute! You're not Linkara!
Oh, but I am Linkara. More or less.
And this is where the true story of this arc begins. Everything else was more or less Linkara just doing skits, and sort of stuff you will no doubt have come to expect from people on the website at this point. But this is when things begin to change a bit in Linkara's videos, and the stepping stones for what I personally find to be the most interesting element of the series begins. An ongoing plot between videos. While it's nothing complex, for now, for the rest of this arc, and across several videos, Linkara will be subtly attacked, messed with, or manipulated by this new character. This Linkara with a plastic robot hand. A character that will come to be known as Mechakara. These attacks with Mechakara turning off the lights in Linkara's room, which Linkara is fine with since he takes it as his opportunity to stop reviewing the bad comic he was just reviewing. Not really sure what Mechakara's plan was there, but you gotta start somewhere, I suppose. I guess being mildly annoying is how Mechakara begins his evil plot. Then later, Dr. Insano warns Linkara that a great evil is after him, and that he's really mean, and that he made him cut his hair.
He's mean too. He made me cut my hair! The bastard! I will have my revenge.
Though Linkara doesn't seem to take this too seriously. Then Mechakara uses some fucking science magic on the Countdown comics, which brings them to life, causing Linkara to have to fight them. But he eventually defeats the sentient comics with his Power Rangers toy or something. Then, interestingly enough, Spoony's videos, once again his Final Fantasy VIII review, particularly the final entry of said series, is important for the plot of Linkara series. And while again I don't want to get too lost in the weeds of all that for right now, to basically cut to the chase, Spoony fucking dies via a large explosion in that episode by its end. That is right, in Spoony's video game review show, he fucking dies, with the only remains of his body being a gray lump of protoplasm that finds itself in the hands of Linkara, who intends on bringing his friend back to life. He does so via cloning him and basically putting all his thoughts and personality into the clone, with the addition of a foreign thought, that being that Spoony now thinks that Revolution of the Mask is the greatest comic ever made, the comic Lewis was making at the time during these episodes.
Revolution of the Mask is the greatest comic ever made. Buy it now.
Yes, Revolution of the Mask is the greatest comic ever made.
And the continuity alarm breaks. What's the continuity alarm? Well, it's a device that might have been built by Linkara, I guess, that is meant to force him to stop bringing up the continuity of other comics due to the mistakes of the ones he's reviewing. It being a kind of gag Linkara had for a bit regarding how badly comic book writers are at keeping up with the continuity between stories. But anyway, it breaks, and then later on, back in the Spoony videos, Spoony comes back to life via a black ring, which is something that is in the comic The Blackest Night. But it also turns Spoony into a mindless killing machine who tries to kill Linkara. However, Linkara is able to luckily stop him by using a Phoenix Down, and then Spoony is fully back to life again. Spoony also finds out that Linkara had that previously mentioned clone running his show for him while he was dead, and so he goes over to fucking kill that guy. It's his show after all. However, he is then stopped by Mechakara on the way, who kills Spoony again and turns him into yet another mindless slave, calling him Black Lantern Spoony to fight against Linkara in the future. Then later, Linkara got through reviewing the Silent Hill Dying Inside series during October, and in the process of reviewing those Silent Hill comics, the town of Silent Hill starts attacking him, and he's got to face off against Pyramid Head, because every reviewer guy has to have a Halloween episode where they face off against some iconic horror villain of some sort, I suppose.
This is generally not a good sign. Excuse me, have you seen a little girl about yay high black hair?
It's kind of amusing, but then Linkara says this shit.
Hey, Pyramid Head, I like the Butcher better.
Bro, that is one of the most fucking cringe things I have ever heard someone say about Silent Hill. And trust me when I say, I've heard a ton of cringe-ass things said about Silent Hill. I've seen people shit on Silent Hill 4. I've seen people defend Silent Hill Downpour. You're telling me you fucking prefer the Butcher over Pyramid Head? Bro, shut the fuck up, you Poindexter-ass dweeb. Anyway, our hero then captures one of the red pyramid things in a Pokeball to defeat it, and defeats the other one via a big Gatling gun. Then, in a Christmas episode, Linkara gets visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, the whole bit, who happen to be played by his mom and dad, by the way, and then eventually the ghost of Christmas future is Mechakara in disguise. You know, some people like to make fun of the fact that Lewis had his family members, particularly his parents, be in some of his early videos like this, with his dad appearing in quite a few ones later on too. But honestly, I find it pretty wholesome that they not only supported their son and his dreams in that way, but also contributed and helped them where they could. So, no hate from me. They seem like very nice people. At any rate, then later, Mechakara kind of sneaks onto the show and does a review of the comic Ultimates 3 number 5, posing as Linkara, hiding his robot hand with gloves. However, by review's end, he gives a grand speech about you, the audience, being the people why bad comics exist because they choose to buy it, and that you, as the audience, choose to just passively listen to these reviewers and believe anything that they say.
Obvious whose fault Ultimates 3 is. You. Yes, you, the audience of this show. Oof, that vacation was just what I
However, this is when Linkara finally sees Mechakara, in the flesh, or metal, I suppose. After months of build-up, finally all leading up to this moment. And then immediately Linkara just ignores him and goes on to do a comic book review, much to Mechakara's anger.
Excuse me, I'm still standing here. You came in, I laughed, you sat down and started reviewing.
Oh, right, you're still standing there. Where were we? Oh, right, let's dig into Youngblood number 2.
But Linkara just shoots his ass and continues reviewing, which is actually pretty funny. However, it's not over yet, as the two then fight, Mechakara seemingly impervious to Linkara's magic gun.
You are an android, but me, I am a man! Gah! Why do I always try to punch robots? It never works!
This results in a big grand reveal that Mechakara is actually Puyo, Linkara's cardboard robot. This is explained afterward when Mechakara ties Linkara up and reveals what exactly is going on. That he is actually an alternate universe version of Puyo, where robots took over, yada yada, you kinda get the idea.
Wait, maybe my memory's a bit fuzzy from the punch, but did you say you were Puyo?
Yes, I did.
And I am. And what should I call you, Mechakara or something?
Be quiet, you ugly bag of meat! Every time your fat maw opens, it sounds like a cat is dying! How anyone can stand to listen to your lisping, shrieking wails is beyond my comprehension!
No, please, don't hold back. Tell me how you really feel.
I will say that you can tell Lewis is having a ton of fun playing this character though, and I can really appreciate that. Even if at the end of the day it's just him literally fucking talking to himself, I sincerely enjoy the effort. So yeah, Mechakara is here because he killed his universe's Linkara long ago, and in that universe, the robots have taken over the world, but there is still a small human resistance that has become a legitimate threat as of late, due to them possessing a power that the machines cannot understand or combat, that being magic. Mechakara is wearing a fleshy skin suit that looks like Linkara in the hopes that the magic gun will respond to it, thinking that he's the real Linkara. Mechakara has been studying Linkara, but also purposely biding his time so he can mess with Linkara, ruin his show and reputation, and make him slowly suffer, since when he killed his universe's Linkara, it was too swift, not satisfying enough. So while Mechakara tries to find Linkara's magic gun hidden in a magic pocket in his coat, Linkara goes on to review a Power Rangers comic, it supposedly being his last review. But just as Mechakara has finally found the magic gun, Linkara breaks free of his binds and an epic battle ensues.
I have no more need of you. Yeah, a bit of a problem there, Metal Pants.
In the middle of the scuffle, evil Spoony is here, but Linkara manages to free him of his mind control through an interesting method.
Spoony! You're standing in my way!
What?
I said, you're standing in my spot, sir! Spoony, great, you're alive again! Okay, we need to go back there!
I'm not in your fucking way! Ugh! Jesus Christ, I think I just broke my foot in your ass!
Fucking Spoony always has the funniest lines. I'm really looking forward to talking about his content because his delivery is always spot on. At any rate, the fight continues, Linkara having his ass handed to him pretty handily, before he then gets help from 90s Kid, Ninja Style Dancer, and Harvey Finevoice. Who the fuck are these guys, you might be asking? Well, they're all Lewis in different outfits, but actually, they are all gag characters from other episodes up until now. 90s Kid first appeared in the Blue Beetle tribute episode of Atop the Fourth Wall, and was just kind of a straw man for Lewis to make fun of. This 90s kid that likes everything extreme and gritty, and hates joy and optimism and yeah. The Ninja Style Dancer is just a dancing ninja that was first seen in Linkara's review of Nightcat 1, and to sum him up, he's just basically a lol2 random joke. Then finally, Harvey Finevoice is a lounge singer in the vein of Frank Sinatra. He first appeared on the previously on segment that, as aforementioned, Dr. Insano was also introduced on. And yeah, he's a mobster guy, usually holding a cigarette and shooting a Tommy gun. These guys will be mainstays, so that's why I figured I'd talk about them now. So these three attack Mechakara and managed to damage him, revealing the metal frame underneath his fleshy skin suit, and him then seemingly adapting to their weapons. The three characters then cheese it because they don't want to die, leaving Linkara once again to face the android by himself.
Geez, sorry kid, but these $1 million pipes were not made for screaming. Thanks a lot, guys! Good to know who I can turn to when I need help!
All seems lost, but as Mechakara gives another speech about how he's superior and how he's gonna kill Linkara, he actually gives Linkara a great idea. To use a Power Rangers transformation to get his internet reviewer get up.
Morphin' time! Internet.
And now, at his full internet reviewer power, hat and coat on, he pulls out another toy and attacks Mechakara, but yet again it is not quite enough. However, then Puyo, his dimensions Puyo I mean, comes out and Mechakara tells him that he is a slave and that he needs to free himself of his binds and help him kill Linkara. But Linkara tells Puyo that he's not a slave, but he's a friend instead, and that he needs to help him, that he'll even give him a raise, anything he wants. In the end, Puyo decides to help Linkara, and accesses Mechakara's network port since it's exactly the same as his, giving Linkara the time he needs to unleash a final blow upon the android, vaporizing him. Or so he thought. In reality, Mechakara gets transported to Dr. Insano's lab to be experimented on and tortured as revenge for making him cut his hair all that time ago.
What? Where Good, if my systems are damaged, I can't. Why?
Well, that's terribly easy to explain. You made me cut my hair! My beautiful, lustrous hair! Eat this, robo bitch! Oh, people have always told me I've had a magnetic personality. I'm back, baby!
Ending out this first storyline. My overall thoughts on this first arc is, it's honestly very fun. It feels like it was a bit schizophrenic and very segmented. Again, because it's clear that this whole thing didn't start out as something that was supposed to be a larger narrative or an ongoing plot, but just random gags, skits, and stuff that sort of emulsified into a plot, as both Linkara and Spoony both kind of winged it over the course of a year or more. It would be pretty weird to review it too seriously, as it was clearly meant to be enjoyed as background stuff to the main comic book reviews. And while this fact is technically true regardless of what point we're talking about in the Atop the Fourth Wall series, as we go forward, these stories will get much more cohesive, less segmented, and will have a solid story it means to tell. So we'll take things more seriously as the series gets, well, more serious. But for now, this first arc is pure early internet reviewer cringe, and gold at the same time. Spoony is without a doubt the best highlight of this era, and every scene he's in, he's always not only funny, but also makes everyone else more funny by proxy. But Lewis can also be pretty funny at times too, or at least he does well at being his sarcastic know-it-all comic book nerd persona. Probably because it's not too far from reality, but still all the same. But all the same, before we move on to the second storyline in this series, let's take a quick peek at a few other things Lewis was also creating at this point in time. So, 5-panel comics is one of those things that most probably don't remember, and as far as I'm aware, cannot actually be found on Linkara's own channel. Not that they were anything particularly interesting, of course. They were basically just the comic book version of Doug's A Movie in 5-second videos. But I suppose I might as well show you a few of them so you can get an idea for what they were like, since, again, they were something that Linkara was making for a little bit in the early days of the website. A big ups to Dr. Killjoy for uploading all of these onto his YouTube channel back in 2012.
I'm a clone! No, you're not! I'm a clone! No, you're not!
I'm a clone!
Yes, you are!
It was I was the grand mastermind behind it all! What?
Are we sure he isn't a clone? No, we just wish he was.
Hello, my darling. Remember what you forced me to do? Remember the horrible thing you did that drove me to... Wait, why are you staring at me like that?
Lady, what the hell is up with your head? Seriously, what is up with it?
Don't you even care that I'm a ghost of your dead wife?
Lady, I remember my wife, and her head was not that effing huge. Honestly, it's bigger than that giant Eileen head from Silent Hill 4. Jeez, what is up with the art for this book? Seriously, lady, somebody needs to Photoshop that thing back to the right size, because right now, that melon is scaring me more than the demons, monsters, and undead wife.
I'm blue and huge.
I'm noble, but I have emotional issues. Sentence fragments. My trademark. Blarg, I'm dead.
I have a huge, convoluted plan to create world peace, and while I have the intelligence to kill off everyone who had the faintest hint of an idea about it, my plan is ultimately doomed due to common sense about international politics. I'm a bloody genius.
Anyway, that's basically it. I just figured no one else was ever going to bring them up, so I figured why not. While I'm at it, Linkara also randomly did this full Let's Play back in 2009 of Star Trek Elite Force, which is something people tried doing during this time. I watched some of it, and it was nothing all that interesting. Mostly just Lewis kind of playing the game, and yeah.
Alright, I know I have this kick-ass rifle here, but I'm actually going to switch out to the regular phaser. Oh, and hey, look, my impossible shadow. Very polygonish. Now, this uses the Quake 3 mod. Now, normally I want to shoot this Borg in the back of the head, but having played this game before, I know I have to destroy this, the distribution node. Explore a bit, see if there's anything else I can find around here.
Again, I just figured I'd point it out since it randomly had a whole section on his That Guy with the Glasses page back in the day. I think he would later go on to do some more Let's Plays as a occasional thing, but it's definitely a lot more rare of him and not something he's ever consistently done. Though I do know that he does stream on occasions these days, so I suppose there's that too. You know, before that, during this time, Linkara was also making another comic, Revolution of the Mask, which I believe there's only a couple issues of that was ever finished, and it didn't really go anywhere. It was something that Linkara advertised and teased about and stuff from time to time back in the early days of his videos on the website, but eventually it just seemed to have quietly been cancelled. And they seem remarkably difficult to find in full on the internet. I suppose I could take another little detour and look at them and review it, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I just don't care all that much. If anyone knows where I could easily read them, maybe I can include it as some kind of little bonus video at some point. But nonetheless, it's clear Linkara's heart wasn't necessarily in it at this point, as the comic book review show became much more his central focus, and where all his creative energy, including story-wise, eventually would start going into. With all that being said, let's jump into the second storyline of the Atop the Fourth Wall series. Storyline 2, The Other Insano. Just like that very short detour, this story arc is also quite short. In fact, it's really more of a transitioning story arc for the more ambitious third arc. Nonetheless, this storyline sees Linkara reflecting on his victory, but also wondering after all that, who broke that continuity alarm if it wasn't Mechikara? And we then see that it was none other than Dr. Insano. Well, actually an alternate universe version of Dr. Insano called Dr. Linksano. Linkara with the famous goggles and a, honestly, pretty damn cool jacket.
Why, it's almost as if the continuity alarm knew that someone else besides the Mechikara had come through Hyper Time. And now is an entire new universe to conquer. The world belongs to Dr. Linksano!
Basically from here, Dr. Linksano starts plotting against Linkara from like another room in his house. Which is pretty funny considering that Linksano is always yelling his lines like a maniac, meaning that Linkara either has really bad hearing, or his house has very thick walls, or he just chooses to ignore yelling people at this point. Funnily enough though, Puyo does hear him, but Linkara just assumes it's 90s kid being loud. Maybe Linkara is so used to loud dimwits being in his house, he doesn't even think to go look when he hears yelling anymore. But anyway, Linksano just starts messing with Linkara in a similar vein to Mechikara, finding worse comics for him to suffer through and shit, trying to make him go insane. He kinda just does the same stuff Mechikara was doing, but now he's a mad scientist doing it. There's not a lot to discuss here, honestly, though I suppose at one point Linksano does hire the help of Film Brain to mess with Linkara by locking him in a room to watch a bad movie.
No. No, it can't be.
That's right. It's mirror time. Well, Linkara, you're free to go.
Film Brain is another one of those early thatguywiththeglasses.com guys that you're sure to see a lot of early on, but who I really do not hear anyone talk about at all these days. Or ever, actually. I, however, will eventually be talking about him in much more detail later. But in short, he was mostly well known for continuing to do 5-second movies after Doug had finished doing them, and then going on to make his own film review show called Bad Movie Beatdown, that was of course featured on thatguywiththeglasses.com, where he reviewed, well, bad movies, or at least movies that he thinks is bad.
And I have noticed a trend. You're complaining about plot holes having a Transformers poster on the wall.
Ha ha ha! Sorry, I still can't get over the Transformers poster staring at me this whole review. Why not do that instead of a good movie like, say, Equashit?
Maybe you should do a review of Transformers. You know, that poster behind you there? Now that was a bad movie. Well, good sirs, I raise you your Transformers, and top trump you with Transmorphers.
Anyway, just figured I'd note that. So after this, we get another instance of Hyper Time shenanigans like before. Once again, while they talk about the Warrior comic, issues 2 and 3 this time.
Time! Dr. Insano! Wrong, you fedora-wearing fruit! I am Dr. Linksano! I come from a parallel world similar yet different to yours. For example, in my universe, Wayne Brady is black.
Well, he's black in this one, too.
Silence, you sad, silly bastard!
Wait, if you're Dr. Linksano, does that mean in your universe I'm Spoonkara?
No, what? That'd just be stupid.
Well, I was just saying that...
Stop saying things! I need a dimensional nexus to bring forth an army of Insanos to conquer all realities, and I found just the way to do it! Aren't you going to ask how?
You just told me to stop saying things.
Oh.
So Linksano is trying to use this to bring about an army of Dr. Insanos from different dimensions so he can take over the world. And by review's end, this results in the real Dr. Insano wanting to fight Linksano. And so both of them summon Dr. Insanos from different dimensions, all played by various That Guy with the Glasses content creators, thus they all get to be Insano at least once. Kind of crazy considering how this all started as a quick throwaway gag, and now it's iconic enough that nearly all the key members of the website are all a part of it. Though, it does make me wonder, why is every alternate universe version of Dr. Insano a different team member of thatguywiththeglasses.com? Is Dr. Insano more of a concept that just simply must exist in some form on the website, regardless of the dimension, regardless of who takes up the mantle of the Insano? Really makes you think. But at any rate, the two teams of Dr. Insanos have a big fucking fight with gadgets and weapons, and maybe a quick clip is best to show you the sheer insanity on display. It's pretty great, honestly. As you can tell, everyone here is having a ton of fun, just kind of doing random stuff and being big fucking goofs. At some point, both Dr. Insano and Linksano realize that if they team up, then no one in this or any other universe could stop them. Except for, of course, a bunch of internet reviewers with magical guns and stuff. And so, Linksano and Insano are stopped, and presumably all the other doctors as well. And this arc ends with a tease that Mechakara may be still alive. And that's kind of it for this one. It's clear this one was once again an arc that was supposed to be even less serious than the last one, and was mostly done as a bit of silly fun, and because Linkara was very clearly a pretty huge fan of the Dr. Insano character, and wanted to do a bit more with him. I also really like how, again, everyone got involved by the end and acted like a bunch of cartoon characters. Content made when these guys were meeting up at conventions is truly golden stuff. True, that guy at the glasses core content, if ever there was a thing. But regardless, there isn't much else to say with this one. So moving on to the next, and a much more ambitious arc at that, and where I would personally say these little skits and connecting storylines went beyond just random connecting pieces and jokes formed into a larger narrative later, and instead, an actual planned out arc from the start. Storyline 3, All That He Sees, He Conquers. So this arc starts out with Linksano monologuing about how he still has more plans to take over the world, when he is suddenly scared out of his wits as he gets a message, an alert of some kind on his phone.
Oh no. He's coming.
So Linksano decides to go tell Linkara that he's making his grand exit out of this dimension while he still can, that there's a reason he left his original dimension to begin with, and that there are forces beyond anything Linkara has ever faced on their way. Lord Vice is coming, the new main antagonist of this arc, and all that he sees, he conquers.
And all that he sees, he conquers!
That's what I just said. Anyway, after Linkara uses his thing-a-bob to exit this dimension, Linkara at the same time also seems to have been transported somewhere, with it being unclear if this was Linksano's doing or something else. And for the next few episodes, other people have to do his comic book reviews for him, notably Harvey Finevoice and 90s Kid, while Puyo tries to find Linkara, as he notes that something from another dimension has scooped Linkara up and is holding him hostage. And it was not Linksano. It was some sort of force that Puyo does not recognize. Amusingly, there is this moment when 90s Kid decides to review a video game, Justice League Task Force, specifically, and this moment happens.
It's totally the same as reviewing Freak Force because, like, they both have force in their name. So, like, it starts out with no music. Wait, where's the music?
You will never defeat me. I control the technology. I have the power to to control your mind.
Something about that I just found kind of funny, and believe it or not, it is more than likely plot relevant. Anyway, Puyo is getting close to finding Linkara, but in the event that he goes missing or dies, Linkara left behind a message for what to do and who his successor should be, that being none other than Iron Liz. Anyway, they do a couple of reviews before Puyo is eventually able to bring Linkara back alongside some other creepy entities, which they all have a big fight with. It turns out that these things are Lord Vice's foot soldiers called Shades. They defeat the Shades, and things are back to normal for now.
I think those kids are gonna be okay.
Do you ever actually light that cigarette?
Shut up.
However, Lord Vice is far from done with Linkara, calling him this world's champion, disappointed that he escaped his clutches. But he sees it only as a minor inconvenience for now.
The entity has fled to this universe, and so I set my gaze upon it. And all that I see, I conquer.
He also notes something about an entity making its way here into this world, something we'll return to later. Linkara then tells Puyo about when he was captured aboard Lord Vice's ship. They mostly just spent time scanning him. He notes how the Shades are more than robots. They are magically charged robots, all their power deriving from Lord Vice's ship, even across dimensions. Linkara wants Puyo to scan all the pieces of the Shades that they have from the destroyed ones that they just defeated, to see if they can find any weakness they might have for next time they attack. Though, to be fair, it seems like they handled them just fine before, so I'm not really sure why he asked Puyo to do that. But whatever, I guess. Anyway, after Linkara gets done reviewing a comic based on the Star Trek game he Let's Played earlier, character Edson Monroe, Star Trek dude, beams into Linkara's room and basically a Vorsoff, that being an alien from the game, warps into the room. And they gotta fight it, yada yada yada, you get the idea by now.
I am Captain Linkara of the Federation starship Green Futon.
However, after this happens...
Good job, Monroe. We need to get you back to the forge so you can...
This weird sound emanates through the room. Again, this will be important later on. Anyway, it turns out that Lord Vice was also the one who created the Vorsoff aliens, showcasing his power to manipulate forces across dimensions. Speaking of, Lord Vice then goes about fixing Mechakara, specifically to destroy the Linkara. Even though Mechakara already failed before, but whatever. In exchange for helping Lord Vice, he promises to spare Mechakara's universe of his wrath. While Mechakara agrees, he wonders why he would bother being sneaky about this whole thing. Why not just throw all your forces at him and destroy him immediately at this point? Which Lord Vice notes is because at the moment, his resources are limited, and he doesn't want to alert the entity that is there on Earth at the moment. Mechakara decides the best way to do this then is to subtly destroy Linkara, mess with what he thinks he knows, and so the big evil plan is set in motion. And more interestingly, on Linkara's 100th episode of Atop the Fourth Wall, he finds himself in a brand new house, or apartment. In universe, he moved to a new place because it became apparent that all these evil entities knew where he lived, so he thought moving to a new area might help in reducing their numbers some. Though, in reality, it's because Lewis was making damn good money off his videos now. He decided to use it to move out of his parents' house and into his new place. Which I say, good for him. However, October of that year of 2010, Linkara would then start his Silent Hill Dead Alive comic book series review, which would be both a Halloween special as well as a rather interesting and controversial to some backstory of his magic gun being revealed. See, it was this moment in time that something shifted with the stories of these episodes. While comedy would always be there no matter what, this series of videos would take things to a darker place. Perhaps more than anyone would have imagined would come from an internet review show where a guy in a trilby reviews bad comic books and fights insane comic book or Saturday morning type villains. During the course of these reviews, Linkara begins telling a story, one about a cruel couple who worship an evil god of chaos. The couple would have a daughter who loved her parents dearly. However, the cruel truth was that she was only ever born to be a sacrifice to this god, to be reborn as a weapon. In order to do this, they would need to torture her beyond reason and break her spirit. They needed to drain her of her life, her essence, to create a weapon so great that it could purge the world of all the non-believers and the blasphemous. However, as the daughter realized her parents never loved her, never truly cared about her, and that she was born to be used, she grew angry and resentful. A torment of emotions raged inside of her, and all of that would be poured into the weapon. Her very soul was infused with the instrument. And then, after the deed was done, when her parents tried to use the weapon, it burned them alive. Their bodies, minds, and souls torn asunder, the girl having gotten her revenge. This would result in a weapon, that weapon being the magic gun Linkara has and has used to defeat so many foes before, him having sort of just coming across it at some point apparently. So in short, Linkara's stupid magic gun that sort of became his signature object secretly has the soul of a tortured and violated little girl inside of it as its source of power. That's quite a jump, to say the least. Now mind you, I'm not shitting on Linkara for trying to go somewhere more serious of his show, but I think for so many, this plot became where they felt like the show was no longer goofy stuff anymore, since there was really no jokes to be made about this here. And you were either for this change, or you weren't. After all, there were those that watched these videos simply for the comic book reviews, and they cared very little about these ongoing storylines, while others enjoyed both, or were even more interested and invested specifically in the storylines, since you also never knew what other characters and content creators were going to show up during them. Nonetheless, this is why I say from this arc onward, the story starts allowing itself to be more serious, and Linkara's writing quirks are coming back. Stuff that I remember thinking and seeing in his novels and webcomic are going to slowly creep in, both in good and bad ways. Another one of the tropes from his writing will be villains that come to represent greater things than simply a silly guy in a coat laughing about world domination, but instead a philosophical opponent for the Linkara to defeat, in addition to a target for his mini Power Ranger toys, of course. Another one of the tropes that are less a good thing will be the exposition and overuse of talking and talking some more and then talking some more, and we'll get to that eventually. Now mind you, while this story was told over the course of 3 videos, Linkara has also been being attacked mentally from both Mechakara and Lord Vice, with the town of Silent Hills slowly encroaching upon him, and people from his past seemingly gaslighting him into believing that he was the one responsible for this little girl's death and torture, and that he uses a weapon made of suffering. Now this is interesting and even leads to a couple funny bits.
Okay, what the hell?
What's up, you fucking murderous waste of trash?
Okay, this isn't happening. You're not really there. I know you're not really there.
Of course not. Why would I be in the same room with a murderous piece of shit like you?
Bat credit card.
Okay, that was just immature. A bad credit card, I'll tell you! I'll tell you all!
The one question I have about this, though, is how did Linkara know this story about the little girl? How did Lord Vice or Mechakara know about this story to fuck with Linkara's mind to begin with? How does Linkara tell the story of the little girl and yet not know his gun is the weapon? How does he tell this story and yet, as we will see, is somehow gaslit into thinking it was his fault or something? The story itself is kind of interesting, if not just kind of copying off of ideas from Silent Hill, but the story and how it's presented to us doesn't really make sense. Now it is, to Lewis's credit, sort of revealed why Lord Vice might be aware of that gun, and why he would indeed take Linkara very seriously as an opponent, because the god that gun was made in the name of was indeed the entity that Vice is trying to destroy. So it kind of makes sense why he would know about it, but that's not revealed till later, and it's never audibly said either. And I suppose we could infer Mechakara also knows about it because Vice knows about it. But it still doesn't explain why Linkara knows about it at all. By the trilogy of videos end, we are then presented the personification of that little girl's grief and pain, in the form of an entity called the Dolorim, that appears before Linkara and convinces him through some sort of hypnosis that he's the father of the little girl. It manages to get Linkara to be racked with guilt with this false knowledge, and he then puts the magic gun to his head to end his life. But this act is then stopped by the real little girl's soul inside the gun, implying that she wants Linkara to live.
No. Partner. Friend.
This Dolorim only existed to take revenge on the parents and adults who harmed her, and now that they're all dead, the little girl doesn't need to carry that rage anymore, and thus he is able to get rid of her for good. The magic gun and him are now coming to a greater understanding of one another, Linkara now knowing it's not just magic, but the sacrifice, and now cares for the little girl who was thrown into the fire by her evil parents, that her magic is now being used for good, to fight off evil. Also, Linkara gives a grand speech about his accomplishments.
Time and again, someone got it into their head that they could defeat me. Time and again, they beat me down, they knocked me out, and they tried to make me give up. You come at me with insecurity, self-doubt, and angst? You trying to make me doubt who I am? I am the man who defeated Pyramid Head. I am the man who conquered Countdown. I am the man who fought off the Borsov and destroyed Mechakara. I am the liberator of Kickassia. I am a Starfleet captain. I am a Power Ranger. I'm that guy with the hat. I am Linkara.
You could tell Linkara had chills up his own spine while saying that. Also, yes, Kickassia had already happened by this point in time, but again, we'll get into that later. Again, Lord Vice is disappointed in this development, but he's also not surprised, as he doesn't underestimate Linkara, unlike Mechakara, who can't believe that his manipulation tactics failed, and that he actually managed to kind of empower Linkara more, if anything. And so then, Linksano is here to be enforced by Lord Vice to fully upgrade Mechakara so he can now go and kill Linkara, since it's clear psychological warfare will not be enough. The next plot development, we get to see none other than Angry Joe get a highlight, as he actually sees Lord Vice's ship orbiting the Earth, because Angry Joe is on a space station in case you didn't know. So he alerts Linkara that Lord Vice is here and ready to attack very soon, it seems. Obviously, yet again, we will talk about Angry Joe in more detail later, but he was also a very prevalent creator on the site, and one of the most successful among them as well. His main shtick is being an angry video game reviewer, usually reviewing more modern games though, and that actually did set him apart from many of his peers at the time, as most of them were reviewing older video games from the NES and SNES type eras, since most were following in the angry video game nerds' lead at the time. At any rate, people are worried about Lord Vice's arrival, and they note that the ship is actually invincible due to some multi-dimensional stuff, so they can't attack the ship directly. So all they can really do is wait for Vice to make his move. And his move he makes indeed, as after Linkara gets through reviewing a Power Rangers comic, Mechakara, now fully upgraded, comes to attack Linkara, Vice's resources making him invincible to most of Linkara's weapons, and he can no longer have his code rewritten by Puyo anymore either. A real fight has to commence, and a real fight it is. Or as real as the same guy playing the same two characters, mostly using special effects and the like. Anyway, Linkara, having gone through all his Power Ranger toys, eventually realizes that he's kind of fucking cooked, getting his ass handed to him, so he has to defeat Mechakara by summoning more Power Ranger weapons. Okay. As Linkara notes, his arsenal of freedom keeps growing, and Mechakara keeps adapting to them. It's a real back and forth, and Lewis ends up going into like Power Rangers mode, wearing this all-white getup, and getting a real increase in power. This, according to the Atop the Fourth Wall wiki, is his Zeo suit, and also according to the wiki is, quote, the most badass thing on the internet, period, unquote. Which is, well, I can appreciate the enthusiasm if nothing else. And it kind of reminds me of the Lightbringer getup, so that's funny, I suppose. Anyway, he delivers his iconic line,
I believe when we first met there was something I said. Oh yes. You are an android, but me, I am a man!
and defeats Mechakara, or so it seems until Mechakara finds Linkara's magic coin and uses it to become a giant robot. And so then Linkara does the only thing he could reasonably do, get into a giant mech himself and have a big fucking mecha fight. Cool. He actually saved that Neutro robot from, like, the very start of the first arc, just in case of a situation like this, which was a good callback. Actually, that's something I've noticed a fair bit during this arc. There seems to be a lot of callbacks and explanations to how everything in this universe works. How every little skit or joke can potentially come back as an actual plot detail later. How even the most random of things can return and become a mainstay, or could be way darker or more complex in origin, like that of his gun. Again, it seems like Linkara was taking his series story much more seriously at this point, and wanted to keep telling bigger and bigger stories. And you can really feel that here. As you can probably guess, Linkara defeats Mechakara, though even after he is defeated, we do see the last remnant of Mechakara, that being his hand, move a little bit, so it's clear that this won't be the last time that we see him. At this point, Lord Vice starts getting a little bit mad, as he had fully expected Mechakara to be able to defeat Linkara, and he reprimands Linksano for failing at upgrading Mechakara enough. And he's even more angry at Linkara, seemingly even being more powerful than before, and thus Lord Vice decides that enough is enough, that he can't risk the entity escaping again, that he must kill this world's champion himself. So then, after yet another comic book review, Lord Vice literally just fucking appears in Linkara's room. And immediately, he has a pretty cool design. It's that perfect mixture of random Halloween costume pieces and homemade stuff, all drenched in black and Darth Vader shit, that really sells me on it. Also, the mask helps, so that even if Linkara or someone else is underneath the costume, you don't really get to see them.
So you are the champion of this universe.
Champion? What are you talking about?
It has been my experience that in almost every parallel universe, there exists at least one person, one champion that foolishly tries to defend that universe from perceived threats. So far in my conquests, I have defeated 16 such champions. When they fall, their universes fall with them.
And how do you know that's me?
There are ways of detecting it.
Then maybe this is the one where you finally get stopped.
You are welcome to try.
Lord Vice notes that every universe has a champion that tries to fight to save their universe from his reign, and that Linkara is this universe's champion, or in other words, Linkara is the savior of our universe. All praise him, I suppose. So Linkara tries to fight Vice, but Vice confidently defends himself and slowly walks after the Linkara. You know, it's funny, I keep calling him the Linkara, but Linkara is just his name. He's not the Linkara like in the books, he's just Linkara. Such a bad habit, but yeah. But anyway, no matter what weapon Linkara uses, it does nothing to Lord Vice. However, Vice then gives Linkara a speech about how basically he's here to protect this universe from a far greater enemy. That the reason he conquers universes is not for simply mere power, but to protect them from the entity, a god of chaos that is the eater of all things, a being that erases all that it comes to contact with, and when Vice tried going to other worlds to warn them of the entity, they did not listen to him. So instead he decided to conquer these worlds, to control them as to better protect them from the entity. How he does this and how conquering these worlds saves them from this entity is kind of beyond me, but it is yet again another Linkara-ism, like those found from his novels and webcomic before, where we have this all-powerful evil ruler that secretly does evil things in the pursuit of good things, or something like that. Lewis is a big fan of these types of villains, though I guess it is handled a lot better here than, say, General Wares from the Lightbringer series, since this entity seems beyond control, and perhaps Vice sees conquering these worlds as a better alternative than to let them be completely erased. It's at least a much better question of, is it a good means to an end than the stuff found in the Lightbringer comic? Though it does mean he is killing people along the way. Maybe if it explained how him conquering worlds actually stops the entity at all, it would be a better showcase of this as well. Nonetheless, Linkara then tries using his Pokemon, or Pyramid Head, to fight Vice, but he handily kills him without much fanfare. Linkara then gets his ass handed to him again. However, just as it seems all is lost, Linkara then grabs Vice's lightsaber hilt, or I mean his power weapon of sorts, off of him and uses his own weapon against him. And this actually manages to put a dent in his armor, something which seems to actually scare and freak out Vice, causing him to warp away back to his base, despite clearly being able to kill Linkara right now, especially since he just saw that he had a weakness against his own weapons, and he's basically already knocked out and on the floor and is completely defenseless. He could kill them right now, but you know, whatever, I guess. Both sides regroup so that we can have a big final battle a little bit later. Linkara is shaken by his encounter with Vice. All the same, Linkara trying to figure out what he can do as he comes to realize that Vice has killed literal gods. What chance do they have against him? But now him and his crew have time to think about what to do next, and Linkara soon realizes that Vice could have killed him yesterday, so why didn't he? He realizes that it was because he was scared for a moment, and the idea forms in his head. He has 90s Kid, a refined voice, and others prepare to help in stopping Vice, including getting the help of Angry Joe and his army, because Angry Joe has an army, I guess, in case you didn't know. With a plan and trap set in motion, Linkara finds a way to contact Lord Vice via the remnants of the Mechakara hand, and basically tells him to come fucking fight him and stop being a chicken shit.
A signal from the android. Shade 1, put it on.
This is Linkara calling Lord Vice. If you're receiving the signal, then you might want to take that huge-ass helmet off your head and listen for a minute. Listen, I just wanted to tell you how deeply honored I am. You see, I was once told that you were the stuff of nightmares for gods and monsters alike. And that's why I'm so honored, you see. You've seen fit to show me your true colors. And the main one is a big, bright shade of yellow. All that you see, you conquer, huh? Well, I guess you never really did set your eyes on me then. You were too busy looking the other way and running for your life. Why don't you go tuck your cape between your legs and run home while I deal with it? After all, it's what you're good at. However, if you want to prove me wrong, you know where to find me.
Despite Lord Vice being this all-powerful emperor and shit, he ultimately loses his cool because Linkara's speech was just so epic and cool, you know? Why doesn't Lord Vice, like, shoot a fucking laser nuke at Linkara's house? Does he have one of those? Surely he didn't conquer all these worlds on foot alone. Doesn't he have some ships he could dispatch? Perhaps some mechs? A whole army? Conquering universes takes a pretty big operation. And obviously the answer to all these questions is no, because they don't have the budget for any of that in this internet review show, and it would probably just be a bit too elaborate for a review show anyway, but still worth pointing out. Also, how did Lord Vice kill gods? Was it his lightsaber thing? Yeah, it was probably his lightsaber thing. With that said, Vice comes back to attack Lightbringer in a big, epic final battle. Both him and Iron Liz shooting weapons at him to basically stall him for time, since they pretty much do no effect on him. Monroe, the Star Trek guy, then proceeds to come and get them some help as well, and then proceeds to get his ass handed to him. Then, as all seems lost, the trap turns out to be set. Lord Vice tries transporting himself and Linkara with him to his ship, but he can't, and his energy is depleting rapidly. And that's because while he is down here fighting them, Angry Joe's army had been invading and conquering his ship.
To the right! To the right! Move it! Come on! Come on! Go!
Vice wonders how they managed to get past his force fields, and that is soon then answered. It was none other than Linksano that did that, as he was actually a double agent for Linkara, and he was also just done playing second banana, and was done running from universe to universe to get away from Vice. So he teamed up with Linkara to spy on him from the start, and to get access to his ship to turn off the shields so that his downfall could be all set in motion.
Hear of you! I want to be the conqueror, damn it!
You think that was my only source of power? I am Lord Vice. Everything I see, I conquer, and I will not be defeated by the likes of you!
While Vice might have been strong in other universes, here he needs a constant flow of energy in order to stay strong, which is why he is now vulnerable with his ship disabled. Why does this universe have that stipulation? I don't know. But also, he needs his suit in order to survive this universe, and he's afraid of death, since his death would mean that the entity would never be stopped, yada yada yada. But anyway, so the final fight ensues, and they all team up against Lord Vice and beat his ass. Though after they all use their power, he's still somehow alive, so they wonder if they should kill him for good. But Linkara decides that no, he should be exiled instead. So they take him to a deserted planet where there are no life forms, no technology, and basically Lord Vice is just gonna sit here alone for the next 400 years or so as punishment for what he's done, with no means of escape since there's also no means of killing him. This was the best option. Lord Vice warns that they have doomed the multiverse, and that he will regret this, and that they will eventually come crawling back to him, because the entity is amongst them, and it will be their end. The end of all existence, actually. Linkara thinks that even if that's true, Vice did nothing to stop it, and has no means of stopping it either. So, if it comes, he will handle it himself. The arc ends with everyone celebrating their victory, and now Linkara gets to have his own ship, Vice's ship that is, now his, to be a full-on captain and shit, getting to live out his dreams as a Star Trek captain of a ship, ending out the arc. And that's it. As I've noted, this is where a long story and conclusion was clearly more planned out, and was taken much more seriously, with this basically being a low-budget Power Rangers movie playing out at the start and end of many of his reviews during this time. Like I said, this is either something you dug or you didn't, but it was clear it was here to stay, and Linkara would only be leaning into it more and more as time went on. Lord Vice is an interesting villain, and the entity, for sure, seems like it's going to be worthwhile, hopefully, since it's been built up for this entire arc, and definitely has me interested to see what comes next, even if I know deep down it's just gonna be more nerds in a costume being overly dramatic. But hey, no one said that that wasn't entertaining. I will say that I did like that Vice was defeated via outsmarting him, rather than just a new power transformation or a new weapon or something, even if Vice kind of seems like a big dumbass in retrospect for falling for any of this. However, before we move on into the next story arc, I'd like to take a quick detour, as it's clear if you couldn't tell that Power Rangers is a pretty big part of Lewis's life, and influenced this series in more than a few ways. So it only makes sense that besides his comic book reviews, the other big series Linkara is well known for, on this website and YouTube and beyond, is his Power Rangers retrospective.
Ladies and gentlemen and others, welcome to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1.
So yet again, my friends, I feel a little bit guilty. Just the same as most of the comics Linkara reviews I am not familiar with, the same can be said with Power Rangers. Which isn't a terrible thing, mind you, as his series on Power Rangers is actually a bit of a history on the series as well, making it actually very easy to follow along with. Like I said before though, the only issue with watching a retrospective or a review on something that I'm not familiar with is that personally, when discussing and analyzing it for a video like this, I can't really have too many opinions on his actual takes and thoughts on the series, be they hot or cold, since I'm just not familiar with the stuff that's being discussed. If I were truly nuts, I guess I could watch multiple Power Rangers series and then watch his multi-hour retrospectives on them for more context, but I'm not gonna do that. However, what I can say objectively about Linkara's Power Ranger history series is that it's very detailed and clearly made out of pure passion. It's got a lot of info and lore about the show that makes it easy for someone new coming in to really get a good sense of what the series, its characters, storylines, the making and history of the series and the like is all about, and why he holds certain opinions on the series and its stories as a whole. Though I will say his insistence to not want to discuss the source material for Power Rangers, that being Super Sentai, which, in case you didn't know, is the actual Japanese show all the fight scenes and stuff come from in the series, the Power Rangers show being like an adaptation with American characters and the like, to make it more kid-friendly, I guess. But regardless, Linkara seems to have some disdain for Super Sentai, and I'm not sure if he still has that these days, but definitely in these early videos I can feel that, and it just comes off as very confusing to me, I must admit. The retrospective may not be the first of its kind, at least I don't think it is, but it's gotta be one of the first of its kind in regards to long-form retrospectives like this, as most other reviews of series or films were just that at the time. Quick looks and maybe a breakdown of the movie at best. And while now it is certainly pretty easy to find multi-hour epics about just about any game, film, or series as a whole on YouTube, hell, you're watching one right now, with them being some of my favorite forms of content to watch on the platform personally as well. But back then, this was quite an ambitious project. I do believe Linkara was the first to do it with the Power Rangers series period as well. I think technically Red Letter Media's Plinkett reviews of the Star Wars Phantom Menace film is probably the first of its kind of this genre of video, but these series-long retrospectives going through all this stuff was definitely very rare at the time, and perhaps almost seen as too ambitious of a project for a video series or no, so I gotta give him props for that. And it seems many others at the time did too, as his Power Rangers history videos actually were some of the most popular things he made on thatguywiththeglasses.com, and in many ways even dwarfed his Atop the Fourth Wall series in quite a few circles. And hell, if you go to his YouTube channel right now and look at his top most popular videos, it is almost entirely dominated by his History of Power Rangers series, with only a few Atop the Fourth Wall videos even coming close to their numbers, showcasing that there is a far larger audience for it, perhaps. In fact, rather infamously, one of Linkara's first controversies on the site came from when people kept asking him on his other videos when the next Power Rangers history was going to be out, since there were many that were watching him exclusively for those videos and didn't really care as much about his comic book review show. This flavor of comment, I suppose, was pervasive enough that Linkara had apparently had enough of seeing it and decided he was going to respond to it all at once in a video, in one of the History of Power Rangers videos. A response that wouldn't go over very well.
So yeah, it's been a while since the last History of Power Rangers. As such, I need to address a couple of things that have cropped up. Yes, I'm aware of the David Yost interview. Yes, I'm aware Power Rangers Samurai is coming to Nickelodeon in 2011. Yes, I will continue to do History of Power Rangers through that series once it concludes. Now, many of you have been very patient in waiting for these videos, and for that I'm very grateful. Others of you have not been so patient to the point where I'm actually taking time out of this review to talk about it. Let me say this once again, since apparently it was not made clear when this video series began. History of Power Rangers has no set schedule. The videos are done when they're done and will be released when they're done. In case you haven't noticed, I've been more than a little busy the last few months. If you haven't noticed, wake up already! I attended Power Morphicon, FallCon, did a very complicated ending to an episode of Atop the Fourth Wall, released additional videos in October beyond my regular workload, did my regular workload, which consists of an episode of Atop the Fourth Wall every week despite conventions and other difficulties, one of those difficulties being moving into an apartment. In addition to that, people don't seem to realize how much work actually goes into these videos. Here's the process. I watch the entire series, which for those of you at home is around 40 episodes at 20 minutes each. That's roughly 13 hours straight if I was watching them all in one day, which I'm not. Oh, but it gets better, because I also am writing up a synopsis of the important plot points of the season, as well as writing down character notes, themes, etc., etc. And oh yes, I need to also have my own life outside of it. So when will the next History of Power Rangers be out? When it's done. I'm sorry if I'm coming across as ungrateful or needlessly angry, since I'm not. I love that you all care about this series, and I'm doing everything in my power to get it done. But it's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. Asking me when the next one is going to come is not making it get done any faster. I have warned you all before that I'm in unfamiliar territory now, and it's harder for me to skip through stuff that I've never seen before. And I appreciate offers of people to point out what's filler and what isn't, but I have to make that evaluation for myself. And please, please, please avoid spoilers or telling me, skip this season, it sucks. It's History of Power Rangers, not History of Power Rangers except for this season or this season. Every season will be watched, everything evaluated, everything will be given a fair chance to impress or disappoint. Like I said, I haven't watched these seasons before, and I want the chance to be surprised by things that happen. Stop telling me what's going to happen. You're only going to piss me off. The thing is, I want to have fun while I'm doing this. Constantly badgering me for the next videos does not equal fun. It makes it a chore for me, and if it becomes a chore for me, I will be disinclined to work on it. And with all of that said, let's get to Wild Force already.
As a content creator who juggles iceberg series, video game retrospectives, internet personality documentaries, and whatever else I feel like doing in this particular moment, I can understand how seeing comments constantly from people wanting a certain type of content can get a little bit old, especially if you're busy with a different type at the moment. But, truth be told, these comments come from a place of anticipation, of love and excitement for these projects. And I personally would never begrudge anyone for simply expressing that eagerness for the projects, even if the answer realistically is, I don't know, I guess they'll be done whenever I finish it. And I think that's why this rant really made people angry. Lewis comes across as a whiny baby, needlessly attacking his fans over simple comments, and his tone and hostility over the whole thing seems cartoonish at best and needlessly furious over fucking nothing at worst. It's no wonder it's got memed on and parodied over the years and become so very iconic, a centerpiece of the internet's lore surrounding Linkara.
So yeah, it's been a while since the last History of Power Rangers. As such, I need to address a couple of things that have cropped up. Yes, I'm aware of the David Yost interview. Yes, I'm aware the Power Rangers Samurai is coming to Nickelodeon in 2011. Yes, I will continue to do History of Power Rangers through that series whilst it concludes. Now, many of you have been very patient in waiting for these videos, and for that, I'm very grateful. Others of you have not been so patient to the point where I'm actually taking time out of this review to talk about it. Let me say this once again, since apparently it was not made clear when this video series began. History of Power Rangers has no sense yet. Your videos are done when they
Now the thing is, I will say that Linkara was doing a lot of work. He was making videos of high quality every single week, and his Power Rangers retrospective was obviously quite ambitious, and clearly it was made from a place of passion and love for the franchise. But the thing is, if he just made a post or simply a quick comment about how he's been busy lately and there's no set schedule for the series, without the hostile tone, I don't think anyone would have cared or even batted an eye at all. It would have literally not been remembered in the slightest. Instead though, Lewis made it seem like his life was so fucking hard and made himself look like a giant jackass crying about having to watch Power Ranger episodes, and now people commenting about how excited they are is ruining the fun for him, or even people just trying to suggest episode orders or which episodes are filler or no, and just attacking them for no fucking reason. So while I say maybe most don't give Lewis credit for his work ethic, which he clearly does have, none of that matters when at the end of the day you act like a giant fucking bitch, especially to your own fan base. And besides that though, that's all I really have to say about his Power Rangers retrospective series. It's pretty well made for what I've seen, his pissy rant is quite iconic, and it's all an important part of his history as a content creator. But with all that being said, I don't really have much more to add to it. So let's jump to the 4th arc of the Atop the Fourth Wall video series. Storyline 4, A Piece of the World is Missing. This one follows up with us finally finding out what the entity is. And it's here I'm gonna start skipping a bit because this arc is actually pretty simple when you break it down. For the most part, this arc sees Linkara viewing comics as always, as he slowly starts to notice strange phenomenon. Notably, characters in his show keep disappearing. The world's population is decreasing at an alarming rate. Even other internet reviewers are going missing, all seemingly being erased by the entity. On top of that, some kind of ARG-like elements start happening with his videos, as some of the end credit portions begin glitching and messing up. Though we don't really see much as far as plot progression until the very end of this arc. But in between all of this, a sort of random tangent is had where we see an alternate universe version of Linkara called Mirrorkara, who is evil and wears a yellow vest that everyone makes fun of, who is planning to use his spaceship to take over the world, while Dr. Insano in this version's universe is a good guy and stuff. I only really bring this up because it will kind of be plot relevant later. At any rate, eventually everyone is slowly deleted, and Lewis starts realizing that this is all too much, that he has no idea how he's going to defeat the entity, that he doesn't even know where it is, until something occurs to him in his mind, that at the end of the arc, there are only 2 people on Earth left, himself and 90s Kid. It is then that's revealed that through this whole arc, 90s Kid has been being controlled, possessed by the entity.
Heavy.
Yeah, dude, major heavy load here, man!
Heavy. Heaviest
I mean, dude, either one of us could be next, man!
Beneath the seas beside the flame.
There was so much I wanted to do with my life, like play a CD32X game.
He called me. He called me and distracted me.
Dude, I may never have a chance to meet Rob Liefeld.
I'm a fool.
I know, dude. I mean, how could you not like Rob Liefeld? I mean, just shut up!
I should have seen it before. I'm a complete fool.
It was you. Dude, what are you talking about?
I didn't want to believe it. After all, you're an idiot. But then again, that's why you're the perfect cover. No one would suspect the innocently moronic 90s kid, would they? And I think I even know what you are. The clues were all there. Its voice is not its own. You have no voice or image of your own. You need to use others. Your mere presence has been causing little glitches and errors all over the place, particularly in the credits of my videos. The poem gave away the whole story, but I didn't think about it correctly.
There are so many ways of bringing you about, and you have so many names. But in the end, it really all comes back down to the one thing to call you. A piece of the world is missing. It doesn't mean it's gone, it's your name!
This game has been very amusing, but I think it's time for it to end.
Missing number.
Which is pretty wild. But more than that, it's revealed that the entity is actually Missing-No from Pokemon. Which, if you aren't aware of what that is, Missing-No is a glitch found in the original versions of Pokemon Red and Blue. Due to the programming of certain in-game events, players can encounter Missing-No via a glitch, which appears as this blocky mess of pixels, and is one of the more famous video game glitches of its sort. And, well, that's kind of where it ends. It's a programming error, but Lewis seems to have been really inspired by this concept, as he actually used it within his 4th Angel Armor novel, in a chapter that I kind of skipped over during the retrospective on that, but that was because it wasn't really plot relevant in that book. It was just a monster that had to be defeated in the middle-ish part of that one. But now it's become the main villain of the Atop the Fourth Wall series, the glitch somehow becoming a sort of outer world god, an eater of other things, wishing to corrupt all other living beings in every dimension until all can be part of the whole, as the single perfect entity of the missing number.
I defeated Vice, took away his power, and exiled him.
You performed as well as I could expect, and I was not without gratitude. I was not without gratitude. Humans value their independence, so I left you be while I began my work.
The ninja-style dancer saw it coming, knew who you really were.
The ninja had no voice, like me. He fled to find allies, and just found me waiting. My limbs are infinite and have stretched to every point on this planet.
And you absorbed him while I wasn't looking.
He is beautiful. He is beautiful now.
The entity cannot be killed. It cannot be fought with random toys and objects. Even the magical gun that it was connected to is ultimately erased by it. This leads to Linkara sitting in his room while the entity toys with him, knowing it's already won. And so Linkara reviews a Pokemon comic, and also shares some fucking dogshit opinions about the Pokemon games while he's at it. At any rate though, he then comes up with a plan. Something simple. He asks Missing-No what its ultimate plan is, which it explains it wants to erase everything until the meaning of existence comes to mean only it. And then Linkara asks what it will do then, when there is no one else to erase, when it is only there as pure existence, when it is all alone. What will it do then? And basically Missing-No has no answer to this, and while it tries to come up with an answer, it basically has nothing it can come up with, as Linkara presses it more and more.
I was just curious, what are you going to do after you finish your goal?
I will exist. Everything will be me.
Yes, we know that part, but what are you going to do? You will exist. Neato! What are you going to do to pass the time? You will have absorbed everything, and I do mean everything. You will not just be the only being in the universe, you will be the universe. So, what are you gonna do as the universe?
Existence is important part.
Yes, but why do you want that goal?
Everything should and must be everything should and must be me.
And when everything is you, what are you going to do next? What is your purpose when your purpose has been fulfilled?
Which leads into Linkara eventually asking it one more question. What happens when an outer god dies? And Missing-No decides to find out by killing itself, thus freeing everyone in a race and ending the conflict. I know I was a bit brief with all that, but yeah, that's kind of all this hour and a half of storyline amounted to. I will say that I do like that the entity, after all the build-up, was at least beaten by something other than a new transformation or random tool Linkara pulled out of his ass or something. Beating it with logic it doesn't understand is pretty clever, though it does make me wonder if it was a bit too easy. After all, I would assume that the entity does not care about boredom, loneliness, or anything like that. I mean, it wants to destroy all of existence, erase it. Imagine if Linkara asked that question and it said nothing, and that's the point, but I guess not. Linkara used human logic and a question about emotions, motives, to defeat what I assume to be a programming glitch, or godlike logic, which is interesting. Also, and I don't want to be this guy, but at some point, with as much time and effort Lewis has put into this series, there does kind of come this moment where you come to the grips that every time you see a new character being introduced into the series, it's almost always just gonna be Lewis in another costume again. This really can't be helped since he's kind of doing all this on a budget and with a real time crunch at that. It's probably just easier for him to get another costume rather than get a new actor in here and work around their schedule and what have you. But at the same time, you can't help but feel a little disconnected from the stories after a bit. I also say this because most internet reviewers who have skits and random other little plots for like an episode or two usually, end it there at the episode, and then move on. Sure, it's them in a new outfit too, or like maybe there's one or two other friends they have available, but you don't really care because at the end of the day, it's just a quick skit. But with Lewis, this series has been getting bigger and more ambitious. Well, maybe at the end of the day, it's just a more elaborate version of what the other review people were doing. It's still a thought that has passed through my mind whenever I found myself kind of interested or invested in a plot element of the series, or excited to see what this new character that is being teased will be about, and then realized, oh wait, it's just gonna be Lewis in a slightly different outfit again. Maybe this is me putting way too much thought into all of this, but I figured I'd express my thoughts on it all the same, before I go ahead and suspend my disbelief again for the sake of continuing. Anyway, this arc, while kind of interesting with the ARG-like segments, I found to be a little bit boring narrative-wise up until the very end when we finally see the entity. And even then, I don't know, maybe I'm starting to lose interest, but this arc kind of just bored me overall outside of a few ideas it had. But with that villain defeated, maybe the next arc will be more interesting. With how much the entity had been built up with these last two very long arcs, I'll be interested to see what Lewis does next. Storyline 5, His Blue Soul, is pretty short compared to the last few, and in essence, this arc sees Linkara building a new body for Puyo, but it's not long before evil is afoot, and the old robot hand of Mechakara seems to have transferred some of itself into the new Puyo body, and suggesting that Mechakara will be back once again. However, this is not actually the case, as a spoiler I guess. Lord Vice was the one to rebuild and upgrade Mechakara, and I guess he's able to use the technology he built to transfer his consciousness into the robot shell. How he does this is sort of explained, as Vice had many backup plans and the like, and anything he built, he has ways of transferring his essence or soul into, I suppose. Kind of like living as data.
I have always known the nature of the entity, a creature of pure, living data. Even with my power and my weapons, it was possible that it could not be killed by conventional means. As a last resort, I knew there was one way to ensure victory. Become the very thing I hated. I am now living data, my physical form restricted to whatever object I possess.
That, however, is something that is revealed at the end of this arc, and in the meantime, this arc does take one of the established characters, Linksano, and after a rather silly plan he had to defeat Linkara with this robot thingy called a Cybermat, who Linkara just kind of finds cute, Linkara decides to offer Linksano a deal, that being to work for him as his official science advisor, which at first Linksano thinks is preposterous, and says how he wants to take over the world. However, in a similar fashion to how Linkara defeated the entity, he asks Linksano what he's even gonna do once he's taken over the world, if he's ready to control the world's economy and a bunch of other stuff that seems rather daunting to do. Linksano tries fighting back, saying that he wants hot chicks and wants to order people around and the like. Linkara notes that there's gonna be resistances constantly trying to stop him, and he won't have any time for any of that. He won't have time for his sciencey stuff or any leisurely stuff because he's gonna have to spend the rest of his life constantly trying to maintain his power. And Linksano ultimately agrees that it doesn't seem like a whole lot of fun when he puts it that way, and decides that he will go ahead and work for Linkara, since Linkara promises him that he can give him all the technology he wants, robots to command, and hot babes too, which I guess is all Linksano really wanted. It's kind of a funny exchange, and honestly makes sense since this character is clearly one Lewis loves playing, so him just kind of being around without always being a bad guy I suppose is fine, since he's kind of outclassed by all the other much more powerful major villains at this point. Call it villain power creep I suppose, though I will say that the bit about the evil villain not actually knowing what they want to do with their grand master plan and basically no actual convictions whatsoever is it's kinda getting a little bit old now. I guess Vice wasn't necessarily defeated that way, but his whole reason for doing all the things he did was pretty fucking dumb, and he had no actual good arguments to fight Linkara, which kind of makes it seem like he didn't really plan what the fuck to do either, which makes him look just as dumb as the entity and Linksano. The only one that has yet to do this is Mechakara, since at the very least he's kind of just has a simple goal, and couldn't be reasoned with, and had nothing you could really debate him on anyway. It's just something I noticed with Lewis's writing that stayed true throughout his novels, comics, and into now. He loves to win arguments and showcase how dumb evil people are, and that's fine, but once in a while it would be interesting if there was a villain that actually could beat Linkara in an argument, or have stronger convictions. Anyway, Linkara's ship, now called the Comicron 1 by the way, gets taken over by who they think is Mechakara, but is actually Lord Vice as we noted earlier. Linkara and co of course go about trying to stop him, and Linkara has a little moment where he talks to Puyo and asks him how he's feeling, if he's ever done anything wrong to him, and that sometimes, as much as he trusts Puyo, he worries about him becoming Mechakara in the future.
Puyo?
Yes?
This is probably not the best time, but since we are stuck here and everything, do you ever resent me?
I do not understand the question.
It's just, do you ever wonder if you'll end up like Mechakara, you know, hating humanity and hating me?
No, I never wonder that. Do you?
Yeah, I do.
I admit that is not the answer I was expecting.
I'm sorry, Puyo. It's just in my nature to worry about these things. Look, if you've ever felt that I've mistreated you or any other machines...
You have not. You have given me incredible freedom. I can come and go as I please, and I am a paid producer for your show. In return, you have repaired me, offered upgrades, and even volunteered to construct for me a new body. I have been, and always shall be, your friend.
Thank you.
However, Puyo reassures him that he cares for him, and that he considers Linkara a great friend. All while, he's now a little CGI graphic, which, admittingly, I did kind of find a little bit cute. All the while, Linkara is in this Star Trek getup, and reviewing Star Trek comics, which I bring up because, besides Power Rangers, Star Trek was also one of the most prominent series that Lewis has referred to, talked about, and parodied in this show. And it was here something rather interesting occurred to me. Star Trek is known for a great many things, but one of the most prominent things is its dialogue. From the techno-babble meant to explain how things in their universe work, to ethical issues, politics, debates, clashing of cultures. All these things are presented through dialogue, and in many such cases, conflicts can be handled via dialogue rather than force in the shows. It is a show about space travel and space politics, and while I may be pointing out the obvious for many, it's clear here why Linkara's videos, his stories get more and more dialogue heavy, to the point where, and I'm trying not to be super mean with this, but watching one of these hour-long story compilations sometimes feels more like a 2 or 3 hour video instead of one, with how dense they are with dialogue and discussions about space shields, how a villain did a thing and why they did it, how we can defeat them with X because Y, re-bringing up events that just happened in the last episode or the last season, and kind of recontextualizing them over and over and over again. It's all just so fucking boring at times. It's not so much the talking, but the fact that between the jokes and attempts at something actually kind of emotional or cool, it's just so much exposition, reminding the audience over and over at past events what they were doing, and it gets to be much. Straight up, by the time Linkara actually gets to the robot and finds out that it wasn't taken over by Mechakara, but instead Lord Vice, and then Lord Vice starts explaining why he does what he does and how he did this and blah blah fucking blah, me and my friend had to take a break for a minute because it was just all kind of grating after a while. Again, don't get me wrong, it's clear these stories were meant to be fit in between comic book reviews, and were not ever written with the intention of you watching them like this. So I concede that the format here is part of the issue, and that's on me to some degree, since Lewis writes at the start of each one of these videos that very thing as a disclaimer. But all the same, the story that is here is just not that engaging to me this time. All that being said, this arc then sees Puyo sacrifice himself to stop Lord Vice, which leads to an emotional moment where Linkara has to say goodbye to his robot friend.
Puyo!
Repairs complete.
Puyo, did you hear what Liz said?
I knew what I had to do. I stopped the other me.
He's not you.
You said you were afraid that I might become like him. I hope this proves otherwise.
You didn't have to prove anything. You're nothing like him, Puyo. You're my friend. Puyo, I'm so sorry.
Do not apologize. And do not grieve. Cannot continue speaking. Need concentrate.
No.
And this scene is handled decently well. It's just, not the best acted, but I'll give it to Lewis for at least trying, and it was a nice little character development moment for Puyo. However, Lord Vice is still around, and he starts wreaking more havoc on the ship again, and then we get the scene where he explains how he got to where he is now, and then Linkara decides to have the ship self-destruct, so that Vice cannot control the ship since he means to take full control of it, since it was originally his after all. So Lewis goes about trying to stop him, and tries to tell Vice that there's no need for him anymore, that the entity is dead, and that they even have visual records of this. But Vice basically just goes, "Nuh-uh," and doesn't believe Linkara for a moment about that. However, luckily Puyo didn't really die. He put his data into a different body, and then helps in stopping Lord Vice, leading to a scuffle that ends with Vice getting kicked out of a spaceship window and out into the darkness of space, all alone once more.
Have had enough of you!
Linkara is happy to have Puyo back and promises to make him yet another new body in the future, ending this storyline out. Overall, really not my favorite storyline that's come up so far. Again, the Puyo stuff was alright, but Lord Vice coming back through this means was not that interesting, and really nothing else was all that interesting during this arc either. But, moving on. So with this next arc being over 2 hours, it is without a doubt one of the most ambitious ones Lewis has done thus far, and sees characters actually going through character arcs, which is pretty wild. This one's titled Gun and Sorcery, and starts with a mysterious gunslinger wearing some pretty cool-ass drip and a Edward Elric cosplay wig teleport into Linkara's apartment. He's here for one thing, to steal Linkara's magic gun. But of course, Linkara's not gonna let him have it without a fight, so a gunfight ensues, with the gunslinger sporting a magic gun of his own. However, ultimately, Linkara is victorious after ranting about how sick and tired he is of people breaking into his house to pick a fight with him. The gunslinger teleports away, him obviously planning to come back, and then Linkara boasts about how nothing can stop him, and he's the ultimate badass and stuff.
I have fought conquerors, robots, and monsters, and I have been victorious every time. There is nothing that can stop me now! Nothing!
And just as soon as he gets done with that, a blinding light flashes from his gun. His magic gun, his signature weapon, is now suddenly useless. This is the main crux of this storyline, that Linkara has lost the magic from his magical gun, and soon all his other devices as well, like his sonic screwdrivers, his Mighty Morphing Power Ranger stuff that he uses. All of it suddenly doesn't work either. The show kind of going meta to explain how these things are actually all just props and toys, not the real devices. The truth is, they were all toys, made real with an enchantment from a book of spells. More lore about this is dropped as Linkara notes it's hard to get these things working correctly, and how it has limits. But with all their weapons now not working, they're in big trouble, as there is another spell Linkara had been using this whole time, a low-level protection spell on his apartment, mostly to avoid guns and blaster fire from destroying all the walls when fights ensue here. So now, if the mysterious gunslinger were to return, the battle could leave them homeless, and the items could fall into the wrong hands. Linkara is confused why his magic isn't working anymore, and he notes that much of it came from the spirit of the little girl in his gun, that they are partners, and that he hears her whispering in his ear when he uses the gun, which is, interesting. But Linkara thinks that there must be some kind of magic suppressor field being used in his house, and so he immediately suspects that Dr. Insano is to blame, and thus he goes and pays him a visit, threatening his life.
Who are you selling to?
I don't know what you're talking about!
Anti-magic field generator kit. Who did you sell it to?
I haven't sold one of those in months! Not since they discovered the defect against blitzballs!
Damn it, then who disabled all my magic?
Well, I don't know, I'm a scientist! Wait a minute. If your magic's not working, why are you threatening me with a magic gun?
Because I can still beat you to death with it!
Easy to me!
If I find out that you were lying to me, you'll be eating those goggles.
Yes, I understand!
However, Dr. Insano is not to blame for this mess, but Linkara did just accidentally reveal to him that he is in a vulnerable state, causing Insano to begin to plot.
So, his magic isn't working, is it?
So Linkara gets back home and is clearly stressed and worrying about what he's gonna do. After Linksano suggests he contacts some sort of magical expert, he decides to contact the Last Angry Geek and ask to see Cloak One. Now, you're probably wondering, who the fuck is the Last Angry Geek or Cloak One? Don't worry about it. We'll talk about them another time. Let's just say it involves lore from the second Channel Awesome movie, Suburban Nights, and leave it at that for now. Regardless, This dude knows magic, and while he's reluctant to help Linkara at first, after a bit of bargaining, he tells Linkara that he needs to go visit Malachite, a powerful wizard who has lived for thousands of years, and who is currently working at a coffee shop in Wisconsin. And thus begins what will become Linkara's journey arc, where he will be outdoors, visiting various cons and, going places. I legit will say that I really enjoyed this part. It's nice to see Linkara go somewhere besides his house or a green screen. Just like I said with my AVGN video, I love when these types of review shows actually go places. It's charming and much more fun than always using a green screen for fucking everything. While he's away, he also has a hologram of himself there to continue to review comics in his stead. While on this grand journey, he mistakenly travels south to the Minnesota State Fairgrounds, where he tries to find an expert to fix his magic gun.
Perhaps here I can locate some individuals who can assist me in my quest. Alright, so that's my magic gun, guys. Is there anything you can do for it?
Well, I guess we could draw on it.
Put POW right across it.
Yeah, I can make some funny stuff for it. Put in like a zombie there, or you know, like.
The purpose of my journey is to find experts in the field of magic, or at least the paranormal, and fortunately, such individuals were nearby. Okay guys, so that's the story of my magic gun. Is there anything you can do to help me?
Then Linkara accidentally goes even farther south to Bloomington. There, he only finds one magic individual, who unfortunately cannot help him since guns did not exist in his time. These are all, of course, just excuses for seeing him at various cons interacting with people, but again, I love this shit. I really, really do. There's just something so cozy about seeing old convention footage, and especially when a bunch of dorks are doing silly skits and stuff there. You know what I mean? Does anyone else relate with that?
Players generally ignore people, since they're used to seeing all sorts of strange oddities. They do not frighten, and they never try to converse with you.
Sir, I'm gonna please have to ask you.
You would think a convention of this sort would be teeming with magical individuals, but I only found one. So yeah, that's my situation. My magic gun is disabled, and I figured you, with all your millennium magic and all that, might know something about it. Can you be of any assistance?
Well, unfortunately, guns do not exist in my time.
Right, they're all invisible.
Exactly.
Alright, thanks anyway, sir. My visit to this strange place was short, but I feel I've learned much. And of course, the thing I appreciate most about occasions like this are the people.
Anyway, then at some point, Linkara meets up with the Cinema Snob at White Castle. The Cinema Snob is yet another guy we'll be taking a much closer look at in a later video. But for now, let's just say he was one of the more popular people on the site.
I've run into the native peoples too, and they have taught me much about their ways and customs.
You gonna eat that?
In the middle of all this, back at the apartment, the hologram of Linkara reviews the comic One More Day for his 200th episode, and ends up being visited again by more That Guy with the Glasses people, including Bennett the Sage.
Hello, Linkara. It is I, the devil.
Oh, hi, Bennett.
Not Bennett, the devil. I have come to you with an offer
to exchange my soul, or my show, or my non-existent marriage to erase one more day, right?
Well, yeah.
Obscurus Lupa.
Lupa.
I'm so mysterious.
Lupa! Lupa!
What?
You've been doing that for 10 minutes! Is there a reason that you called?
And Cinema Snob.
I've existed since the morning of the world, and I shall exist until the last star falls from the night. Although I have taken the form of Caligulus Snobulus, I am all men as I am no man, and therefore I am... What?
What the hell are you doing?
I'm doing the Caligula thing.
Why?
Because it's your 200th episode. Aren't you reviewing the Caligula comic?
No!
Oh, well, this is awkward. And to think I used Lloyd's favorite blanket for this.
And even that guy with the glasses himself.
Ah, Joel and True, Linkara.
That guy with the glasses?
Yep, that's me.
What do you want?
Why, to offer you a deal, of course.
I'm listening.
If you give up your little comic review show, I'll totally erase one more day from existence.
You can do that?
That's a very good question. And the answer is, of course I can. I'm the devil. Why, just look at this. See? Now I'm in a different place. And my beard has grown a little bit.
Huh. So you are.
And all you have to do is just sign that paper that's in your hand.
Okay.
Which is pretty funny and even has a callback to Linkara's first ever video.
That deal, that guy with the glasses, and shove it! Thanks, that guy with the hat. Haven't seen you in a while. Glad to know you still got my back.
Oh, not a problem at all, Linkara. This is that guy with the hat saying, there's no such thing as a stupid question. This robe doesn't fit me anymore.
However, Hologram Linkara, or Holokara, as the wiki calls him, starts acting strange, lashing out at 90s Kid violently, and threatening to fucking kill him if he interrupts him again.
Is what you done!
They don't watch the show for you, idiot. Stop interrupting, or the next time you try, I won't let go of your heart until it stops beating.
Then, by the next episode, Harvey Finevoice angrily confronts Holokara, demanding an explanation for threatening 90s Kid. Holokara basically then tells him to fuck off. Harvey pushes farther, realizing that this hologram is acting deranged and out of control, and tries to shoot it, only for it to have no effect since it's, a hologram. And he then beats Harvey's ass.
Harvey, please don't get in my way. It'd be a shame if I had to crush your throat. I mean, how would you ever sing again?
This later leads to Dr. Linksano and Harvey trying to plot on how they're going to deal with this Holokara, as it seems it is plotting something far more sinister as well. Meanwhile, Linkara explains that while the leads in Canada turned out to be dead ends, he did get some information about a great wizard living in the area. Linkara finds himself at his suburb home and is greeted by the great wizard Atlas, who now goes by Steven. Linkara explains the situation and hands the magic gun over to Steven. Steven expects the gun and begins to talk to it, much to Linkara's confusion. Steven then informs Linkara that the girl inside the gun is named Margaret. Linkara says he's been trying to find out her name for a while now, and then Steven says that he hasn't been able to because he hasn't unlocked the gun's full potential yet. And there is a reason that the full potential of the gun has not been unlocked by him. It's because he's being a fucking asshole.
Look, I'm gonna explain this in the most direct manner I possibly can, so it can get through your thick skull to your tiny little brain. You are turning evil.
Steven accuses Linkara of being arrogant and power-hungry, and so deluded that he can't even see it. He explains that people see magic as a means to gain more power, but the truth is magic can't be used for evil. Magic is tied to the being and the mind of a person, to their very soul. It can be used to defend and to heal, but it cannot be used to actively or even passively hurt others. The human soul can tell the difference between right and wrong, even if the mind can't. Linkara is basically put on full blast for all the shitty things that he has said or done, and that the gun, Margaret, wanted to stop working so Linkara would be faced with who he has become. or who he could become if he doesn't evaluate himself now. She's worried about him, worried about what he might become. Linkara fights back, stating that he's not turning evil, but Steven says that often Linkara has used his power selfishly, lashed out at others unreasonably, worried about his own problems before anyone else's, arrogantly assumed his solutions were the right ones, ignored the suffering of others, and went off into his own world, oblivious to the words of others. Basically, he tells Linkara he's been an arrogant narcissist, know-it-all, who's super powerful and annoying to be around at times, and a big stupid dumbass poo-poo head. This finally causes Linkara to take pause and consider his actions over the past few years, and who he really is, deciding to go back home.
Our actions and our thoughts shape who we are, and yours are not shaping up to be the ones of a hero. I suggest you go home and take some time to ponder who you really are, because you are going to need to help yourself.
In his dejected state, Linkara is then confronted by a young girl, the visage of Margaret. He asks her how she's doing, and says he'd like to talk to her like this more often if possible. But she says not to worry about it now. Linkara then acknowledges his faults, and that he's messed up, but then asks her what he wants of him. What can he do to make this right? Margaret says she wants him to be better. She's been holding back with him because she's been uncertain about him, and what he could do if she let loose her full power. Linkara says that maybe Steven was right about him, and he is going evil, and Margaret should use her power to snuff him out while she still can, before he gets worse. However, Margaret says she won't, and that she still considers Linkara a partner and a friend, and that all she wants to do is help him. She wants him to be mindful of the future, which Linkara promises he will do.
I think I'm ready to go home.
I'm already home.
Ending this particular character arc. Well, mostly, there is one more thing we must get to, but before we do, I did just want to stop and say that I find that this whole arc is actually pretty decent. I think it was interesting for Lewis to both give lore to how his random toys work, and force him into new places outside of his home, as well as be forced to face his flaws, lose an argument for once. It feels weirdly like not just character growth for the character of Linkara, but maybe there was something in there about Lewis himself too. Not bad at all, and for sure one of my more favorite little story arcs of this series thus far. However, there is still the question of Linkara, which, skipping ahead a bit, basically Lewis gets home and has his magic and stuff working again, and is here to help his friends defeat Linkara. Linkara plans to use the Comichron 1 to issue an ultimatum to Marvel. They will begin work on a storyline reversing One More Day, keeping Linkara apprised of its progress. Or he will use Comichron 1 to level Marvel offices. If Spider-Man can't be saved, then at least he can die with dignity. Basically, Linkara is a comically crazy version of Linkara's inner thoughts manifest. You could say it's the evil thoughts he harbored that Margaret felt inside his soul, and thus Linkara must tell Linkara why that's really fucking dumb that you're literally gonna fucking kill people over Spider-Man comics, tells him he's a soy cuck, basically, and proceeds to defeat him, thus facing and defeating himself, you might say.
An ultimatum. We issue a very specific statement. They start working on a story to reverse One More Day, keeping us apprised of its progress, or we level their offices. If Spider-Man can't be saved, then let him at least die with dignity. They're the villains! So it's about damn time that we be the heroes and save these characters! You want to save these characters. You want to show the world that superheroes mean something more than just something to be retconned or wrecked. But in the end, all you're doing is threatening people if you don't get your way. That doesn't make you a hero. That makes you a bully. You're trading one person's imposed stories for your imposed stories. Damn it, all this is too important! Look at what all these horrible comics have done to us, having to deconstruct these stories again and again, and nothing ever changes! No, we will win through eventually. We win hearts and minds. We convince people we're right. We don't force people to accept we're right, and we sure as hell don't put a gun to their heads and say accept it or die. They'll never change unless we make them change. Doc, fry 'em.
They all regroup, and Linkara says how proud he is of his friends, that they banded together to stop Holokara the best they could while he was gone, and that he knows he'll never turn evil, with the support of all his friends. Which I know in the show is a touching moment, but it is kind of funny for him to say that when you remember that these almost are all played by Lewis himself. It's a good thing Linkara has these wonderful headmates to keep his actions in check. Now, while that seems like the end of this storyline, you gotta remember, there's still a matter of that gunslinger. Between all this going on, there's this one scene where the gunslinger warped into a house, which is later revealed to be his spaceship, and is greeted by his own computer, Ciara, who refers to the gunslinger as master. Ciara asks if the gunslinger was able to make Linkara angry, and the gunslinger says Linkara seemed more annoyed than anything. But he thinks that he can make this work. Ciara says it has been studying the records of Linkara's universe and found out that Linkara managed to defeat Lord Vice. Because of this, Ciara suggests that they should steer clear of Linkara and challenge someone else. But the gunslinger disagrees. He says that if Linkara really did take out Vice, then it's more important than ever that they get his magic gun up to full power, and that it's the last one they need before the camera then pans to a table littered with other magic guns. And now that everything is back in place, the gunslinger makes his second move. Linkara, Harvey Finevoice, 90s Kid, and Dr. Linksano are all hanging out when suddenly Nimue, the computer for Comicron 1, by the way, that I forgot to mention up until this point. She's like a HAL 9000 parody, kinda, but anyway, she's the computer for the Comicron 1 ship, warns that an intruder has entered the apartment. However, before she can say much else, her systems are fried, and then the group are left in the apartment. With Nimue disabled, the computer's offline, and with all the doors seemingly sealed shut now, with nothing making them budge, after lots of technical discussion about theoretical ways to get out of here, they are left with the fact that they simply cannot currently escape, and that this intruder could be anywhere in the house. Skipping ahead, this eventually leads to them all getting cabin fever, as they try and fail at many means of escape, or finding out where this intruder is. They begin to turn on each other, mirroring the Thing comic Linkara has been reading through this little arc, and they are now all suspicious of each other, thinking that either someone here is not who they say they are, or someone here has been working against them for a while now. This leads to a huge argument that leads to Harvey revealing that he doesn't trust anyone here. Not Linksano for what he did in the past, not 90s Kid, since he could still have the entity inside him somehow for all they knew, and even Linkara, since there's always an alternate version of himself doing evil stuff. Not to mention, they lost contact with Linkara for months while he was out adventuring looking for the wizard. They don't even know for sure if this is the real guy. This goes around in circles, all while an ominous hooded figure lurks in the background via a shadow. Linkara, after calming down, tries to convince everyone that they need to work together. That whoever the invader is, wants them to bicker and separate, and that he's sorry for leaving them behind with the Holokara, since that's something that seems to have hurt everyone here, and they just haven't really had time to express their feelings on it yet. However, eventually, the evil shadow is uncovered and destroyed, them all coming to their senses, as Linkara suspects that this was the work of the gunslinger. And then, indeed, the gunslinger reveals himself. The gunslinger says he picked up the shadow creature a few months ago when he was fighting another guy with a magic gun. It loosens people's inhibitions and feeds off their rage. The gunslinger is still after the magic gun, but he doesn't want it until it's ready. Just then, the gunslinger gets a signal from his glove. He smiles and says that the magic gun is ready now, saying that Linkara's been busy the last few months, and he didn't need to get him mad after all. That the full power of the gun is now unlocked. Eventually, the gunslinger is trapped in a force field. The gunslinger then says that he heard Linkara defeated Lord Vice, and that he's probably a good guy, and that if the circumstances were different, he'd ask him to help him out, but he knows it wouldn't work. and he then teleports away again. More mystery is set up. Linkara then goes to talk with Harvey, and this is where the Harvey backstory arc starts. Harvey apologizes for everything he said, but he also admits that what he said was how he really felt. He was really angry about the Holokara incident, and he really was ready to kill Linkara over it. Linkara says that he didn't, and that's what's important, but Harvey isn't convinced. Harvey says he needs to get away for a while. He has a concert tour that will take him all over the states, and it'll give him time to think. Linkara is disappointed and asks if he'll be back for Christmas. Harvey says that they'll see. Then, over the course of the next few episodes, we see focus on Harvey.
Fly me to the moon and let me fly.
He is then visited by the nostalgia critic. After the events of the third That Guy with the Glasses film To Boldly Flee, working a side hustle as a ghost of Christmas past. It doesn't matter right now, but once again, we'll get back to it another time. He tells Harvey that he needs to trust Linkara again, but Harvey says that he doesn't trust himself about Linkara. Critic asks how Harvey and Linkara met, and Harvey flashes back to a review years ago, back when Linkara still spoke softly and had terrible lighting. Harvey explains that during this time, he had a son who died tragically, and his wife left him shortly after. Harvey was a wreck and took to drinking. Linkara found Harvey lying by the side of the road while he was training for his new Amazon attack review and got him help.
I was doing what I had been doing for half a year by that point, looking at a cemetery and not going in closer to see my son.
Oh.
Yeah.
How old was he?
It doesn't really matter. It's always too young. My wife left me after he died, and frankly, I don't blame her. Our son was gone, and I was a wreck. I hadn't done a concert in months, and I had barely spoken to her in all that time. The kid found me lying on the sidewalk when he was filming himself getting pumped up for his Amazon's attack review and got me some help. Talked to a head shrinker, stopped drinking, went back on the lounge circuit. The kid saved me, really. I made sure to always have Charlie's back.
Charlie?
My Linkara.
Then Harvey is visited by the ghost of Christmas Present, him appearing in Linkara's apartment and him noting how he always calls Linkara the kid. Then, when the ghost of Christmas Future visits Harvey, he appears in the form of a future version of Linkara, and this makes Harvey have a mental breakdown rant.
Oh no! It's my gravestone! This entire thing has been a complete waste of time, you know that? The ghost of Christmas past shows me what I was like a few years ago. Well, whoopity-doo! You do realize that the past makes up who I am today, right? There's no point in bringing me down memory lane when I already remember all this crap. And then there's the present. Oh, wowie, wow. It's almost like I'm already living that right now, you mook. What good is done by showing me that? And now we have you, the future. And what is the future? I'm gonna die. Of course I am. I'm gonna die. 90s kid is gonna die. The ninja style dancer is gonna die. The little blue robot is gonna die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die and leave when we shouldn't. So what the hell do you get out of showing me that I'm gonna die, huh?
He's clearly not scared of his death. He doesn't care about that, but the gravestone that's there is not his own, but instead that of his son, Charlie's. Harvey sobs and says he doesn't want to be here, and the ghost of the future, or future Linkara, says that Harvey's always here, and that Harvey was the one who brought him here. Harvey says that he can't say goodbye to his son, not when there's someone out there just like the one he lost. Future Linkara says that he's not Harvey's son, and that he needs to accept that, and that he needs to say goodbye to his son. Harvey says that Linkara left for 3 months, and it was like losing his son all over again. He was so angry that he left him again. Future Linkara says that he's not who Harvey wants him to be, and he never will be. He has to let go of him. Harvey asks, when do you actually start moving on? When's a good time to even do that? And Future Linkara says, what better time than Christmas?
You have to let him go.
When do you let this stuff go? When are you supposed to start moving on?
Well, what better time than Christmas? This is where you are right now. Where do you want? Where do you need to be?
Goodbye.
Ultimately, Harvey does finally say goodbye, and thank you, finding himself at Linkara's place just in time for Christmas. Harvey truly happy to be here. And overall, I do really like Harvey's backstory, and this is for sure something I didn't expect to see out of the show. My one gripe, honestly, is when Harvey talks about his backstory, I sort of wish we could have gotten in some more visuals to that. Maybe in the form of comic panels, a small animation or animatic, anything like that maybe in a storybook or noir style would have been pretty cool. I think that would have taken what was a pretty decent storyline and actually elevated it to something so much more. In general though, that's something I wish Linkara utilized more, especially since he reviews comics, and as artists who I know would for sure be happy to do this for him. But all well. For what it's worth, it definitely made the character of Harvey a much more interesting and complex character than I would have given him credit for, and I suppose that's what counts at the end of the day. Again, this whole guns and sorcery arc has been really fucking great with that thus far. Then, in the next video, the gunslinger appears behind Linkara suddenly and just fucking shoots him and takes his magic gun. All that plotting and everything, and it was, at the end, pretty easy task. However, Linkara is not taking this lying down, and so he beams everyone up into the Comicron 1 ship and chases after the gunslinger in his, house-shaped ship. After a bit of a spaceship chase, this eventually leads into Linkara and Puyo entering the ship, with Puyo scanning the gunslinger's computer and Linkara fighting the gunslinger. In an admittedly pretty alright scuffle. It really helps that Linkara isn't fighting himself this time, but instead an actual other person. In the middle of this fight, Puyo and the gunslinger's computer Ciara are fighting with each other and hurling insults, and Puyo actually knows that Ciara is not a very sophisticated computer. And while this may seem like a kind of random throwaway line for now, in the next arc, we actually see Nimue, a far more powerful computer that again controls the Comicron 1, under siege, and it's thought that it was because of her advanced AI Lewis put into her that made her susceptible to this corruption. It made her a very powerful and dangerous opponent under the corruption of Lord Vice in that arc. Spoilers, I suppose. Meanwhile, it's noted later by the gunslinger that Ciara was actually nerfed by him on purpose just to avoid this exact scenario. And thus Puyo's comment here weirdly connects with the larger story that's told later on, which is actually a pretty cool little detail upon reflection. Lewis can be actually quite good at these finer details, so I do gotta give Lewis props in that regard. In the scuffle, Linkara manages to get a hold of the gunslinger's pocket watch, which seems to be very important to him, before he then teleports back into his own apartment. But the gunslinger is hot on his trail and demands that Linkara give him that pocket watch back, causing Linkara to threaten him with destroying the watch. Gunslinger begs him not to destroy it, but Linkara decides to fucking do it anyway because he's tired of dealing with this stuff.
You invade my home. You attack me and my friends. You almost get us to kill each other. You perform kidnapping. And you want to tell me what I can't do?
You don't understand.
Well, that's what happens when you don't explain yourself.
Wait, Linkara.
No! Son of a bitch, I'll kill you!
Puyo then chastises Linkara for destroying the watch, saying the gunslinger is not their enemy. Puyo then explains that during their fight earlier, Puyo managed to get into the gunslinger's computer and learned that his name is Jairus. He then proceeds to showcase several of Jairus' log entries, showing the story of a man who had to leave his own universe because of legislation that was created by the government of his universe to protect the rights of artists going terribly wrong. Jairus, like Linkara, was an internet reviewer, but his work started to get censored by the laws that were passed, and basically is a big metaphor for fair use and content creators being cast as thieves for using the content they discuss. But instead of like your internet videos getting taken down or whatever via copyright claims, they would fucking kidnap you in the middle of the night and send you to prison, never to be heard from again if you dare to review stuff or even speak out against the censorship. And he was one of the people who was kidnapped and imprisoned. A resistance ended up breaking out through all this, and they were able to break him out. And they planned to take down this evil government, but they didn't have the means to do so. So Jairus decided to travel to other universes to find people who could help in their plight. He shows the camera his magic gun, and explains that his wife created this gun, as a link between him and her across universes. It contains both of their souls, and that it will continue to work so long as they are both still alive. So as long as he can shoot, he knows there's still hope that his wife is still alive, which is actually pretty badass and clever. Now that I think about it, unironically, this is too cool of an idea to just be used in a fucking internet reviewer show. However, later on, when Jairus found people who also had magic guns from other universes who were willing to help him out, he took them in his spaceship, and they all went to his world to face the government, only for them all to die. Not out of fighting, but because they cannot exist outside their own universe, or it seems other people can't exist within his universe, I guess, for very long. I guess, so Jairus' new plan was to take a bunch of magic guns from people who had them from other universes so he could have more of them to take down the government. I guess he could have other people use the magic guns on his universe, but it does beg the question how that was gonna be all that different from all the, few he already had. He had, let's say, 5 people he got, and so those were 5 guns, 5 magic guns he had, 5 warriors to help him. They all died, sure, but he still had 5 magic guns, just as many as he was going to have when he originally was going to go fight the government. Why did he need so many more after that? He could have just taken the ones he had and given them to the resistance, and they could have defeated the government. You see what I mean? But whatever. I will say Jairus, played by Will Wolfgram, is a pretty good actor, and I really think that he does add a lot to this arc overall. He's a welcome addition after so long. It's just been basically Linkara playing every character besides the occasional cameo.
And while I may not have others, at least I can still use their guns to save my world.
So, after Linkara learns of Jairus' mission and backstory, he asks Puyo what any of this has to do with the pocket watch. Linksano then explains that while some universes will kill you if you step into them, other universes will simply assimilate you into them. Once you become part of that universe, it's nearly impossible to go home without dying again. A device like that watch can keep one anchored to their universe, and allow them to temporarily exist in another universe, like with Lord Vice and his armor. Linkara understands now and knows that he's gonna have to try and find a way to help Jairus now, since he's royally fucked up. However, just as Linkara is done sort of coming to terms with this chain of events, Nemu alerts him that the Neutro Mecha robot has been stolen, and this has been done by none other than Dr. Insano.
You may remember me as your former president, America! After I was impeached, and really, how was I supposed to know that prostitute was a cop? I began dreaming of something bigger and better! Conquest of the entire world!
Nimoy, deploy Neutro's shutdown sequence!
Shutdown sequence has been deployed. The system is not responding.
You may also recall the most powerful robot ever built, Neutro! It's been out of my hands for a while now, but not anymore! The world governments will surrender to me, or I will level your cities! Although, I might just do that anyway!
which is a nice little callback, yet again, to like the first major plot thing in the series. Not even gonna lie, I was pretty hyped to finally see Dr. Insano, and by extension Spoony again. This leads into a battle where Linkara eventually gets into the Neutromech, and tries to use his same old trick of convincing the bad guy that his evil plan is actually not that well planned or thought out, and that he should like fucking stop being stupid. However, unlike those other fuckheads, Dr. Insano knows what Linkara is fucking doing, and he does have a plan for what he's gonna do once he takes over.
To do this.
No, but I kinda do. Otherwise, I'd have to turn in my Mad Scientist Club card. And let me tell you, the other Mad Scientists can be real dicks about that kind of thing.
Look, have you actually thought about what you would do after you took over the world?
Oh, well, I don't know. Have people fight in my gladiatorial arenas and have lots of kinky sex, just for starters.
So, really, all you want is for people to fight for your amusement and to get laid, right? I have holodeck technology. You don't have to do any of this.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. Don't really give a crap about fake people. I heard you got that Linksano fellow to work for you, but I'm not Linksano. I want to rule the world. I will crush resistances, make people adore me, and make the world's currency Insano dollars. And if anyone tries to bitch at me about it, my robot army will crush them and serve them up as low-quality meat product. In other words, I'm Dr. Insano, bitch, and I'm going to rule the world!
Which honestly I found pretty fucking funny. This whole arc seems to be bringing back stuff from the past, similar to the third arc, calling out Linkara on tropes or stuff from the past, and sort of recontextualizing much of the series and its lore up until this point, which for sure has made it pretty interesting to go through. In the end, Dr. Insano might have been stopped in the mech, but he arrives at Linkara's house donning new gloves that allows him to block all incoming attacks, and he delivers a fucking sick line.
You know, you and I both know how this is going to end. I'm gonna go up to you, beat you up. What the hell?
Something wrong, Linkara? You came here prepared to fight a madman, and instead you find a god?
What are those things?
Epic. So Linkara ends up fighting him, but is having a lot of trouble. But then he ends up finding help in Jairus. Jairus wants to kill Linkara at this point for fucking him over, but Linkara apologizes and promises to make it right. Dr. Insano offers to help him instead, and then an argument is had between them all, ending with Jairus assigned to help Linkara begrudgingly, since it's clear that this Insano guy is a bad guy.
Terrible mistake, because I let my rage get the better of me. I realize that now. But I have resources. I have a ship in orbit with the best dimension-crossing technology in the multiverse. And I have a crazy-ass scientist who can help you get home.
Him? His scientist couldn't make water if you stuck him in a room with a snowman and a blowtorch. Look, I may not know who you are, but I can definitely be of more help than that dingbat.
I know about your mission, and I can help you.
Join me, Full Metal Alchemist. And not only can we take this world, I can get you where you want to go, but with an army of robots to crush your enemies!
I can't promise you success, but I'll sure as hell do everything I can to make it happen.
I can promise you success!
What the hell could either of you do to convince me that you're on the level?
Take it. Take my ship if you have to free your world.
You remind me of some people I don't like.
Anyone who opposes me will be destroyed.
They then team up to defeat Insano in yet a pretty good fight, you know, given the show, stopping the Mad Doctor yet again. Actually, something I've yet to really comment upon this whole time is the cinematography of the series, which is, for the most part, only okay. Most of the time it's just sort of a basic shot reverse shot without much variation. Kind of stilted really, not really worth noting. But in this scene in particular, they went fucking ham with the dramatic zooms and camera angles on Dr. Insano. And I gotta say, I really love it, and it really sells this finale and the character so much. It's great stuff. This ends with Jarrus not willing to fully trust Linkara yet, and then later Spoony having a conversation with Linkara, him apologizing for Insano doing crazy shit again, the two sharing a nice moment.
About Insano, man, he could be a real asshole.
Yeah, considering he killed you that one time, you would know. Which reminds me, how many times have you died now?
1, maybe 3, depending on whose continuity you believe.
You're a friggin' Time Lord, man.
Well, don't pull that Doctor Who crap on me.
Your frustration amuses me.
Dude, you are evil.
Somehow I doubt that. Still, thanks for keeping Insano on a leash again.
I think he just needs to get out of the house sometimes to amuse himself. Hey, are you really gonna help out that gunslinger guy?
Yep. Linksano is working on trying to figure out the coordinates to his home universe. Apparently, the database in his ship is different from Comicron 1's.
Do you really think you can trust him? The dude shot you in the back, and he stole guns for a living.
Yeah, but he's not doing that anymore. And I think the fact that he didn't just take the gun and let Insano finish me says something.
Maybe. Anyway, I'll order the pizza, and meantime, I will kick your ass at Tekken.
Man, scenes like this, seeing their on-screen chemistry and friendship, makes what happens later on, IRL, all the more sad to me. But regardless, this arc ends with Nimue running a self-diagnosis on themselves, realizing that something is off, something is wrong. Their green interface turning red, implying evil is afoot, ending the storyline out. And if it hasn't been made clear, this is for sure the best arc thus far. Maybe outside of the first one, just because I really enjoy all the camp and how much Spoony was involved with that. But storyline, character, and overall pacing wise, this one was much more engaging than the last couple without a doubt. Makes me wonder what will come next. I suppose there's only one way to find out. But first, a small detour.
Hello, my children, and welcome back to Long Box of the Damned! It is always too long a wait before the season of fear comes, and we are reunited.
So, among Linkara's many comic book reviews, something he started doing from 2012 till now is this October special where he reviews a bunch of horror comic books, but not as his Linkara character, but instead as this Hungarian-sounding vampire undead sort of character named Moriarty.
That's the thing about the Twilight Zone. It can give you a headache if you think too hard about it. Trevor Richmond is, well, rich. Rich and powerful from the company he is an executive for. However, he has not exactly been all that moral in his activities, and the FBI are beginning an investigation.
This series is structured rather differently than his normal comic book reviews, as it's less of a review or analysis and more of a play-by-play of the story of the comic, and they are far shorter, spanning anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes usually. These are meant to be more of a brief look at each one of these stories, sort of like a quick anthology type affair. It's often compared to James Rolfe's Monster of Madness, where he does a quick sort of review or look at one horror movie a day, each like 5 or so minutes long. Being that horror is much more interesting than superhero stuff to me personally, this series does kind of appeal to me more, though I must admit that the fake accent he does through the reviews is a little distracting, a little bit grating, at least when listening to them back to back. But I can appreciate what he's trying to go for, I suppose.
We begin with the house. Kyrie's home has been destroyed from the hurricane at the end of the last volume, so many of the disaster victims have had to move into the old row houses, ones built centuries ago that are still around. The particular house they have moved into is said to be haunted.
The series also has a bit of a different sense of humor than normal, with it being a lot more raunchy and dark humored, which again, I appreciate. There's also once where Dr. Linksano did the same thing, but did it with a bunch of comics featuring Godzilla in a Godzilla-thon, which I watched all the way through and was pretty good. Again, as a basic sort of look at them and showing the cool or interesting bits of the comics, the series is pretty decent.
Godzilla was a canon part of the Marvel Universe. Emerging from the ice in Alaska, Godzilla goes on a rampage that levels the Alaskan oil pipeline. This version of the monster was born, like so many other incarnations, from nuclear tests, though in this case underwater ones that awoke and mutated a slumbering prehistoric monster. Yes, Godzilla!
He proceeded to devastate Japan for 2 decades, sometimes fighting other monsters, as shown in the movies, but now he has moved on to America.
Also starting around 2014, he got this super fucking cool animated intro for the series too. While I don't have much else of note to really add here, if I'm being honest, it's a series that I can certainly see why it's remained one of his more popular ideas. Plus it gives Lewis the opportunity to dress up and do a funny voice, which at the end of the day, let's be honest, is really why he makes these videos to begin with. I know your secret, you trilbyed-hatted man. But yeah, overall, pretty cool. But on to the next story arc. The next atop the fourth wall storyline is called Ghost in the Machine, and I'm gonna be straight up with you guys, this one is a huge fucking downgrade from the last one, mostly because it's kind of like a retread of part 5, with basically the plot being that Nimue is slowly going crazy, and Linkara having a hard time figuring out exactly what's wrong with her, it ultimately being revealed that it was none other than Lord Vice, who has been sending his data, or soul, or fucking whatever, into the ship's computer data, slowly corrupting it. Unlike the last arc, where I really felt like I had to comb through to show you all the plot details since so much stuff was going on, this one is very simple in comparison. The computer's being taken over, we bum around until eventually Linkara finds out that Vice is behind it, though he does think it's Nimue at first, which is interesting since Linkara is faced with having to destroy something he cared about in some sense. However, here is where I note something of a trope I do think is starting to get a little bit tired by now. That being, people getting possessed by an evil entity of some sort. It happened with Spoony becoming Mechakara's slave. It happened with 90s Kid getting taken over by the entity. It happened with Puyo's robot body being taken over by Vice. It happened kind of with the magic gun back with Lord Vice trying to use the evil side of the spirit to kill Linkara. Technically, Spoony is also this, like Dr. Insano is technically also this, but that's more of a split personality thing, I guess, more than anything. And now it's happening with Nimue getting taken over by Vice. And spoilers, the next arc is going to happen to basically everyone around Linkara. I guess there isn't anything inherently wrong with this plot development or trope, but it just gets overused way too much in this series in my personal opinion. Anyway, in the middle of this arc, while Linkara wonders what's wrong with Nimue, he starts looking through the grimoire that detailed stuff about the entity before, noting that it was far from the only other outer god, with one in particular that takes his interest being called the King of Worms. This won't be coming up this arc, but this King of Worms will be important to the next one, though for the time being, he does wonder if Nimue is being taken over by this King of Worms. But by arc's end, Vice reveals himself after Linkara makes the tough decision to turn Nimue's, personality brain thing off, since she threatened to kill him, and had clearly gone mad.
I'm not talking to you! Talking!
I hate you. I hate you. And I will be free of you.
Nimue? Nimue, please shut down the engines.
No touchy.
Nimue, I'm sorry. I am going to have to shut you down.
I understand.
I'm sorry.
I met you on a Monday.
Yes, you did, Nimue.
You're going to die on one too.
Not if I can... Why is it so cold in here?
Because I disabled the air a short time ago. Each breath you take reduces the amount of oxygen.
You're going to kill me.
I'm going to kill you.
Your systems are hardwired into every sector of the ship. I have to do a lot of rerouting, Nimue, but I'm ending this, one way or another.
You're a dead man. Dead man.
Clockwork soldiers can't say no. The dead men whisper from the court of worms.
Is that it, Nimue? Is the King of Worms responsible for this?
You smell like lilacs.
Right. This conversation is over.
I love how he's told the oxygen is running out, and this motherfucker still can't shut the fuck up.
Vice. Where are you?
All around you, champion. I am my ship now.
But just as it seems Vice has taken over the ship and won, Linkara turns out to have built a backup auxiliary control room, which he uses to reinstall Nimue, since it was clear she was actually fighting off Vice before. Vice tries to corrupt that room with his influence as well, but before long Linkara gets Nimue back on in the system, and we get actually a kinda cool little animated scene as a representation of Nimue deleting Lord Vice from her system, now that she has determined that he was the issue.
Detected.
Are you able to combat it?
Now that this unit is able to identify the threat, it is able to counter it.
Then have a ball, Nimue!
Very well, computer. Show yourself.
Your data form is proving difficult to eradicate.
I am superior to you in every way, computer. In the time since I last encountered the champion, I have studied you, learned your strengths and weaknesses. My infiltration of your systems has exposed how puny you really are. I have destroyed monsters, villains, and evildoers of all sorts along my travels. By comparison, you have hardly put up a fight.
You are evil, Lord Vice. Despite your proclamations to the contrary, this unit will end you.
I do not fear you, computer.
You should.
Pathetic. Accessing environmental systems for auxiliary control. Cutting oxygen. What?
Access denied.
But I...
You what? Destroyed this unit? Information. At full operating capacity, this unit is capable of thought and calculation many thousands of times faster than a living mind. Information. With that capacity engaged and knowledge of your existence now present, this unit has deduced 329 different methods of destroying you.
But you can't!
Information. Method number 28 is this unit's favorite.
What are you doing?
I am erasing you, Lord Vice. All that you are, all that you could be, will cease. Your existence is at an end.
You cannot! Only I can stop the entity!
You are cruel and unjust. Your battle with the entity is nothing more than a mere delusion to feed your ego. You are tiny.
Do not do this!
Are you afraid?
Yes.
Good.
Which is pretty cool. Again, always bonus points for animated sequences like that. However, as much as it seems like Vice is finally fucking dead, he's not, having taken a shade from the ship, and then he went to Earth with it, meaning that he's still out there somewhere, probably plotting yet again. Linkara doesn't worry about that now though, noting that from now on, things are going to change. No longer will he wait idly by while his friends are taken over and hurt by these bad guys. He's going to actively go after them instead, and in the pursuit of this, Linkara decides to finally change his dirty fucking ass clothes and gets equipped with absolute drip with this cool ass cape, trench coat, a vest, and tie. It's a great look, and I'll hear nothing else about it.
Looks nice. Tie suits you fine.
Alan, you are ruining my big dramatic badass reveal moment thing here.
Shit's fly as fuck, bro. This being his new signature outfit for a while after. And the arc ends with Harvey showing up after being away from months on his concert tour, and then being suddenly zapped by the cybermat from earlier. Again, this arc just felt like a repeat of the 5th arc in many ways, and certainly felt pretty lackluster compared to the last one. But with that being said, let's see what the 8th one holds in store for us. This arc is titled The Machination of Worms, which is a title that goes pretty hard actually, and is basically about that aforementioned King of Worms slowly taking over everyone in Linkara's life. Also, he can capture Linkara and well, use him as one of his puppets, I suppose. At the start of the arc, there's a gag where Linksano gives Linkara a gift in the form of a sentient walking foam lizard, since he mentions that they were a big part of his childhood, and now he has a living one, I guess.
In retrospect, it does seem like kind of a leap from point A to point B. This is not point A to point B. This is point A to point New Jersey. They are not even in the same class as one another. So, you don't like it? Well, I'm not saying that. I just wish you wouldn't play God around Christmas time.
But now this foam lizard is, here to stay, it would seem. And it'll take like a whole fucking year, but it'll eventually come in handy at some point during this arc.
So, how's life treating you so far?
Do I have a big metal wire sticking out of the back of my neck?
Yep, totally integral for your spine to work.
Linkara is trying to build new weapons to fight against Vice when he returns, all while secretly these cybermats are all being controlled by the King of Worms, and he is slowly destroying Linkara's weapons like his Xenomorpher, covertly. Linksano is eventually attacked by one of these too, as well as Ninja Style Dancer, 90s Kid, etc., all of them secretly being replaced by identical androids, but subtly suggesting things that are all meant to move Linkara towards his doom. However, on episode 300, we get a bit of a detour from this plotline as his Mirror Universe counterpart, Linkara, if you remember him being that like random detour last time as well, is here again. And it seems that Linkara also has his own mirror version of the magic gun, with the girl inside it as well. But in this alternate universe, the girl volunteered to be a weapon of mass destruction, making her evil too. Now, see, I thought that the torture and torment was important to the weapon being made, but I don't know, maybe it's different in that universe. Anyway, a battle between the real Linkara and Linkara breaks out, until Linkara then uses a device that renders Linkara's current weapon useless. This gives Linkara a chance to use the Megaforce Morpher though, which allows him to use a slew of other weapons with their own, like, outfits and stuff. All of them basically being references and callbacks to other outfits and powers he's used throughout the past 300 episodes of the series, which is pretty cool, I suppose.
Oh poop. Cause I got a brand new combine harvester and I'll give you the key. Da 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 da. Like the never. What a pity. You activated my trap card.
He then basically kicks Linkara's ass and tells him to go fucking take a hike back to his dimension, ending that bit of fan service out. They then slowly learn more about the King of Worms, with a poem being written about him that goes, "The King of Worms wears a crown of terror. In the court of worms there is none fairer. We are all equal beneath the surface layer. Our souls are screaming in begging and prayer." And basically the King of Worms' whole shtick is that he was a outer god that is perverted by the sensation of fear, him coming to understand it, and then at first it completely wrecking his whole existence, understanding what fear means, but then deciding that it's actually the most powerful tool in the universe, and that if he utilized fear, he could actually supplant the other outer gods and gods in general that do not understand fear. And yeah, I'm skipping a lot of context and stuff here, and them looking through files and trying to figure stuff out, but that's basically the whole idea. It's all rather ominous and clearly building up to something. And skipping past a bunch of stuff again, eventually Linkara opens a portal to the King of Worms world, his friends all helping him with that. But this is of course all exactly what the King of Worms wanted. His friends reveal themselves to be robot copies of his real friends, and he is then taken prisoner in the portal. They also preemptively deactivate Puyo along the way so that he can't help Linkara out.
What the hell are you doing? I am disabling Nimue's interface with the internal systems of this apartment. That should have just stunned him. I don't... Harvey, we're surrounded. Correction, Linkara. You are surrounded.
Thankfully, the fucking foam lizard that was, again, first introduced about a year ago as far as video time goes, comes in handy, with her introducing herself to Puyo as Eliza, reactivating Puyo as they devise a plan to save Linkara and the others. Meanwhile, Linkara is being escorted by his real friends who are under the King of Worms' control via metal masks.
Has been decided that your equipment is not a danger to our king. Harvey, what the hell is going on? Where'd you get the robot arm? The android that attacked you was a replica. It has been in your universe for a year now, acting as an agent of the King of Worms. And you're the real deal. This body is of Harvey Finevoice. All that he was, however, is now in service to the king.
And eventually Linkara faces the King of Worms, who is impervious to any attacks, and has an interesting voice.
Bout!
Fear. Leave us.
I hear and obey.
It is about fear, human. In a time before the rays of your sun ever touched the dirt of your planet, there were beings that stepped upon your universe as easily as you would step upon a road. And during that time, when the outer gods walked among the inner realities, I experienced that which none of my kind have ever felt before. Fear.
I've heard the legend.
I became intimately acquainted with the sensation, and I understood it. And I wanted it. Fear. The ultimate power. The ultimate godhood. Once, long ago, I wanted to remove that fear from my face. But after so many eons of infinite contemplation, I understand now what it truly is. Can your insignificant consciousness even fathom what I could do with that power?
However, we don't really get to see much of the King of Worms before bro gets fucking wasted, because he eventually probes into Linkara's mind and sees all his past victories, but then sees the entity when he was in the form of the 90s kid, who is laughing, but then stops and stares right at the King of Worms. And then the king yells, "No, it cannot be! It cannot be! I did not know! Please, I did not know!" And then he fucking dies. Wow. Alright then. Mind you, they think that their attacks on the King of Worms while he was distracted is what kills him. But then Linksano, by episode's end, sets the record straight and says that the King of Worms died to what was the equivalent of a heart attack. It was basically scared to death. Linkara, being quite shocked, and wonders what frightens a god. Now, we won't be going too further into this, but I suppose the implication is that the entity might still be alive, and possibly within Linkara somehow. Meanwhile, Vice is watching the conversation on a monitor, him noting that the answer is right in front of their faces, and they refuse to see it because they all overestimate their skills. He wants to attack right now, but then fucking 90s kid is there to tell him to chill out, and that the time will come, and that hopefully, when the time does come, they will work with them and not against them, ending out this arc on yet another cliffhanger. Again, I know it seems like I skipped ahead a lot, but this one is just kind of there. It's not the worst, mind you, but again, I feel like the fatigue of watching all of these was really starting to set in. Hell, a plot element I forgot to bring up until just this moment is Jairus actually has his story finished here too, as his wife returns randomly to this universe, and turns out that they defeated the government in his universe off screen while he was away, and so they go back together to their universe to live happily ever after, which I suppose is cool. But notice how I just threw that shit at you out of nowhere? Well, that's exactly how that plot is implemented into this series, with how much screen time was dedicated to him and his story in the 6th arc. It feels like this story was just sort of an afterthought by this point to see more of the Lord Vice stuff, and I guess eventually the King of Worms stuff. Which is a shame because I was interested in seeing Jairus' story more. I was curious if they were ever going to go to his universe and stop the government, tie things back with all the other people he stole gums from. Feels like it was all meant to be something more than what it ended up being here. Not to mention that with his wife and I guess the Resistance basically having stopped the government off screen, it kind of makes Jairus' entire character arc, his whole story of going to different universes and getting magical guns, and even the people that he had join him to go fight the government who died when they got to that universe, completely pointless, because they were already capable of defeating that universe's government without all the magical guns and everything else. It feels just so forced that it feels like maybe something changed between when this story arc was first started to when it ended. Maybe the actor just wanted to peace out and was moving away where it would be more difficult to film more with him or something. But man, I was actually very invested in Jairus and his story, but oh well. Now, after this storyline, the next arc is actually the Atop the Fourth Wall movie, which we will not be going over today. It's its own can of worms and requires a lot of plot details from the third thatguywiththeglasses.com film to boldly flee for context. I've already been skirting around those for a while for the sake of covering as much of the Linkara storyline as I can for you all, so that you could get a pretty good taste for his videos, lore, storytelling, and general ideas there within. But I think it's okay for us to stop here for now. After all, what the hell am I gonna do? Cover every storyline he's ever done? If you're invested in the plot by this point, I suggest you just go and watch his videos. Yet again, there is a playlist where all of the story important parts are right there for you. And trust me, there is still hours upon hours worth of story to go and see. At the end of the day, these storylines have a ton of issues, pacing, writing, and acting wise, and other such stuff, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I laughed, was entertained, invested at certain points, and above all else, it gave me a lot to talk about and write about, both in all the areas where I feel like Lewis really shined and made something truly special, and in every point where I feel like he kind of faltered or took things a little too far. They also made me realize that Linkara was, for sure, ahead of his time, and yet also strangely stuck in his time. What I mean by this is, he pushed the boundaries as far as just how much fucking story and lore can be fit into a review show, with stuff like AVGN, Nostalgia Critic, and basically every other reviewer person and the like having skits, storylines, and even some story callbacks once in a while, but they are usually all very self-contained, and you could pick up anywhere and know exactly what's going on because it's just episodic at the end of the day. And these skits aren't usually all that important either. Linkara, on the other hand, is not like that. If you randomly clicked on one of his videos because you wanted to watch his review of some random comic, there's a likely chance you were about to dive deep into the middle of some storyline that's part of a larger arc of stories that requires hours upon hours of context to fully understand. As an example, if you click on the Delicious in Dungeon Chapter 1 review he did, which some of you might do since it's a kind of popular anime and manga at this current point in time, there will be this little warning at the front to skip to this time code to get to the actual review, because if you don't do that, you will immediately be bombarded with a bunch of stories and characters and plot stuff that makes no sense to you. Now, I imagine that this storytelling method had one of two effects. Either it turned you off the video, as in you just simply decide to click off of it. Perhaps you even looked at all these people in costumes talking about random sci-fi stuff and thought, ew, cringe, and walked away. Or you simply skipped past the story stuff and watched the comic review, not really understanding or caring what that stuff was about. Or you might have actually been caught up and intrigued by the storyline, and curious to see what the lore of the show is all about, maybe getting you to go watch some of his older videos. Or you could be like me when you click on a random fucking review show and you see a bunch of crazy lore and stuff being referenced, and you get cringe FOMO, where you're like, man, what the fuck are all these people doing and talking about? I kinda wanna know what's going on. And so you go back and look at some of their other stuff. But it's hard to say what was the more common reaction. If I were to guess, I'd say newcomers probably would just skip past the story and not really be all that interested in it. But those that actually had been watching this whole time would be, of course, invested in the story and keep going with it. I imagine this is why Linkara eventually did the story-only videos at some point, so that there would at least be some kind of methodology to be able to see all these stories without clicking on like over 300 plus episodes. However, all the same, Linkara did and has stayed true to this concept, for better or worse. And while most have moved away from this, or never really followed this concept to begin with, I can always tell when a reviewer or YouTuber is inspired by Linkara, as they will almost always have a more elaborate story that spans across multiple videos, rather than just one. And yes, there are Linkara clones in case you didn't know, and yes, I will be making a video about them eventually. And just so you know, most of them are not comic book review shows either. They're usually film or video game related.
Jack Buchanan.
Lord Vader.
I sense much uncertainty in you.
Just, a little unexpected to see you here.
I see you have plans to review the original Star Wars trilogy.
Look, whatever it is, I don't have it. I'm just planning to review the films as they were originally intended to be.
But again, that's a discussion for another day. Nevertheless, he did have an impact, and good or bad, you can't take that away. And it's also, for its time, and in many cases even today, ultimately what makes his little comic book review show rather unique. We will eventually cover the Atop the Fourth Wall film at a later date, mind you. But for now, I think overall my review on Linkara's storylines are, they can be pretty funny if there are other people for him to work off of. I think he really is the most funny whenever he's working off of someone like Spoony, for example. And occasionally the stories can even be rather interesting. It managed to get me invested in its little plot several times as I continued to watch. But almost just as often, if I'm being honest, they are a little bit boring, and a slog to get through on their own, with scenes that go on for seemingly forever, just being a back and forth conversation about planning, setting things up, thinking about things, reestablishing things we already know, talking about things that happened before, arguing with characters like Lord Vice. That's just so one fucking note that I have no idea why he even talks at this point. And sometimes cool concepts or characters are just quickly dispatched or written off without much care or thought, as if the idea and the build-up was more important than the actual reveal, or considering what the ending to most of these arcs were even going to look like. But again, for what it is, an ongoing serial that goes between comic book reviews, I suppose it's inoffensive, and sort of fascinating that Linkara went out of his way to do, since he could have just as easily just reviewed comics and have the occasional skit, and no one would have batted an eye or expected more, especially since he was uploading at least one video every single week without fail, and was coming up with this story as he went along. I suppose that's probably why there are some things that seem a little bit half-baked, or don't make a lot of sense, since it was also clear, even if he did plan things out, concessions would have to be made, and ultimately he would be flying by the seat of his pants, I would imagine, quite a few times. I suppose there's only so much I can critique when I consider the context of when it was made and how it was made. And on the whole, I had fun watching it, but still I'm a critical little shithead, so that's my thoughts on Linkara's silly little comic book review show Story. And speaking of that, I suppose now is a better time than any to actually talk about a few of those actual comic book reviews. Well, actually, first there's one more bit of controversy that happened in the middle of all this that I nearly forgot to mention until I was literally editing this video. That controversy being the Please Let the Ads Play special video from Linkara. Now, a little bit of context is needed for this. See, thatguywiththeglasses.com as a site needed some sort of video host in order for it to be kept alive and, you know, not be so susceptible to copyright takedowns like YouTube was back in the day. Videos on the site initially were hosted by Rever, an American video sharing website that hosted user-generated content, until it was eventually shut down in 2011. Though before that, there was already issues that thatguywiththeglasses.com's crew were having with them, as noted in an article from streamingmedia.com, with it saying, quote, video sharing site Rever made a name for itself in its ad revenue sharing model, which promises to split advertising revenue with creators of popular videos. For years, enterprising independent creators gravitated to Rever rather than YouTube, and some even quit their jobs to make a career out of it. According to some of those creator contributors, things took a downward turn starting last year, when payments slowed and then stalled. Rever currently owes many creators thousands of dollars, and, according to reports, has offered no communication telling when payment will be made. Mike Michaud is one of the 3 co-creators of Channel Awesome, the video creation company behind thatguywiththeglasses.com and other planned sites. We've never been paid once, Michaud says. At one time, Channel Awesome had nearly 100 to 200 videos on Rever, but it came late to the party, after Rever had been purchased by Live Universe. The team started posting in July of 2008. By September, Michaud realized from angry forum posts and emailed excuses that Rever would never pay them. They don't say anything that's legit. They stopped mentioning payments in December, I think, Michaud says. Rever owes his team over $4,500. Payment was only one of the hassles for Channel Awesome. Uploaded videos took days to post, sometimes had glaring audio or video glitches, and were often tagged with adult ratings that made them ineligible for ad dollars. Michaud's team removed its videos in January 2009, opting instead for Blip TV, which also offers revenue sharing. The group has made over $40,000 in the 6 months it's been with Blip TV, unquote. Ah, now that right there is important. Blip TV will be the main source of both income as well as video hosting for the site going forward. This, as the article noted, would prove to be quite the profitable choice for Doug and co. It was probably a motivating factor in what pushed them so hard for getting extra talent, did all these major collabs and shit together, because the money was good, very good, and they were all sharing it. And it was a clear example of how good money can contribute to great creativity when applied well. Nostalgia Critic averaged 100,000 to 300,000 viewers per week while on the site, and 1 million page views per month. And by July 2009, the site earned more than $10,000 per month in advertising revenue, and received more than $11,000 in online donations. In the third quarter of the 2009 fiscal year, Walker shows earned $53,000, including $32,000 for Nostalgia Critic alone. This revenue was generated by Run of Network from Puma and Starburst, which is all important to note for what happened next. Now, the details on this are a bit fuzzy, but apparently, thanks to that aforementioned Starburst ad that would play on Blip videos, everyone was getting a ton of dough from it, primarily because the ad was like a minute long and was unskippable. But there was a bit of a mistake in how the money was processed, or the amount they were supposed to get, something like that. But regardless, the outcome was all the same. They made way more money than they were technically supposed to from it. So in order to keep the money and growing audience up, more ads continued to play, many of which could be a minute long with no way of skipping them, which of course made people turn on ad blockers so they could completely circumvent the ads. I mean, hell, even YouTube ads only play for like 5 seconds, and people, myself included, can't even stand that. Imagine waiting a whole fucking minute or so. And on top of that, Blip TV was not the most reliable video player, and oftentimes after the ad played, the video would glitch and just not fucking work, and so you would have to refresh the page only to get the fucking ad again for another try at the video actually working this time. But the thing is, Blip ain't YouTube. And so when this happened with people pretty much mass putting on ad blockers, it started actually putting the company at risk, since video hosting is a very expensive endeavor, and thatguywiththeglasses.com alone was host to hundreds if not thousands of videos. So in response, Blip started putting up a 1.5-minute gray box that would tell you to turn off your ad blocker, or you would have to wait even longer for the video to start, which people, complained about, obviously. And as Blip's bottom line was hit, so too was everyone else on the site. The thing is though, Doug at the very least was, for lack of a better term, the golden boy, the cash cow, and so he was never gonna get affected by it too badly, but I'm sure he was hit with it to some degree. But everyone else, all the other people on there with their more niche fan bases, yeah, it was gonna hit them a lot harder. Thus, with all that context and Channel Awesome history out of the way, this is what would eventually lead into Lewis making an infamous video where he pleads with people to turn off those pesky ad blockers and to let them play.
Hi guys, I just want to talk to you guys about advertisements for a second. I've put this video up on YouTube instead of Blip so that the maximum amount of people can see it without having to see an advertisement first. Lately, many people have been using ad blockers that prevent them from seeing the advertisements in Blip videos, including my own. Furthermore, those of you who use ad blockers may have seen this message pop up, making you wait 90 seconds for our content to begin. And furthermore, several people are upset about this. As such, let's talk for a second about why the ads are there and why I need you guys to see the ads. Here's the thing. Atop the Fourth Wall, History of Power Rangers, all the videos I produce, this is my day job. I have no other job except for producing the videos. This is how I pay my bills. This is not a hobby for me. It would take too much time for me to produce the videos and work a 9 to 5. I just couldn't do it. Now that's not the same case for all producers on Channel Awesome, but it is the case for several of us. And the companies that sell advertising can tell when people use ad blockers. As such, when it happens, it's counted as the ad not being seen and thus money is lost. I know that the ads can be repetitive. Part of the problem is that a lot of companies don't trust online advertising. Partially because of ad blocks. Thus, less advertising is sold and there's less variety. However, there are ways around that. 1. You can mute the ad. That way the ad is still counted as viewed. You can mute it for 30 seconds, check your email, check another tab, or whatever. Some people have told me that they do not wish to support a product that they don't feel is worth the time sitting through the advertisement for. In other words, they didn't like the video. And for that, well, okay. That's your opinion if the video is not any good, but that's basically saying that you have no respect for me or my efforts to entertain you. It's a trade-off. In order to watch this video, you watch the ad. The 30 seconds you lost for the ad is really not that much in the grand scheme of things, especially when you compare it to the amount of advertisements on Hulu, TV, or hell, even trailers for movies. And failing all of that, if you still wish to use AdBlock or are just unable to see the advertisements, there are other ways of supporting the show. I will be releasing an Atop the Fourth Wall DVD with brand new material in the next month or so. When that's available, please purchase it. Purchase my t-shirts available here. And if neither of those options are appealing to you, I will be setting up a PayPal donation button. I have resisted this action in the past because I feel that the show should support itself through the advertising revenue, and hopefully in the years to come, it will continue to do so. However, enough people have asked to directly donate money to me that, fine, I'm giving in. And I guess that's it for me. Thank you very much for your time. Please keep watching, and I hope to keep entertaining you for however long this train lasts.
Now the thing is, this video caused a ton of controversy, with people mocking Lewis for asking you to watch the ads, and to turn off your ad blocker, or to donate to him, and many people were saying that he was entitled, e-begging, and that he didn't have a real job, and so now he's resorted to this. And basically a ton of people lost respect for him due to this video. And while on the face of it, I can definitely agree, telling people to turn off their ad blockers is really fucking cringe, and I think it's probably one of the silliest things that he has said in the video. Even as someone who makes a fair bit of money with YouTube and ads, I would never tell you to turn off your ad blockers. No matter which way you slice it, it just comes off as really desperate and money hungry. But to play devil's advocate, if I'm being honest with you, I don't really get the overwhelming hatred for the video. I mean, yeah, a lot of the memes surrounding it are pretty funny, but honestly, the tone of the video is pretty chill, and at no point does he say he's entitled to your money, just that this is his job, and if he doesn't earn money from it, then he can't keep making videos as much as he does. And he also does give options for merch and direct donations if you prefer that over watching the ads. The one sticking point is when he said it's not that much at the end of the day to just watch the 30-second ad. Maybe that part does come off as a little bit whiny. It's still tonally not the best for sure, but if I'm being honest, I was kind of expecting a full-blown rant out of this video. Kind of akin to his Power Rangers one where he throws a big bitch fit. But here, it does seem like he's being a lot more genuine. I suppose it's easy to call it pathetic to ask for donations period though, and the culture around making a living off of making content on the internet was very different than it is now. Though, being fair, a lot of people would still say that it's not a real job. But in general, independent creators are definitely much more respected now than they were back then. Even if being, say, a YouTuber or a streamer or something of that sort, maybe even just an independent artist in general, still has a lot of stigma around it, I would say that it's definitely a lot better now than what it once was, where basically if you asked for any form of income or money for what you were making, it was akin to online social suicide. I suppose you could say in this way Lewis and really all of Channel Awesome were way ahead of the curve as far as this whole making online content as a career thing goes. Being online entrepreneurs, individuals who were making their own content, their own way, the way they wanted to, and earning money through that. But being the first isn't always the best. I think it is an interesting time capsule though, with things like Patreon and the like being pretty commonplace with content creators of all kinds these days, and donations during live streams and the like being a pretty common occurrence, with entire careers being launched from it from every which angle. There's just not so much of a stigma against it anymore. Maybe familiarity breeds understanding or something like that. I would argue that the respect for videos now is far greater than it was back then though. I think a lot of people viewed videos and content online as incidental. Cool to look at maybe, but not much more than that. But as time has gone on and people have gotten to see more creativity, understand the people who make those pieces of art, more and more higher effort things are created, and people grow up enjoying these things and being inspired by them in the same way those early creators were inspired by other online things or films or books and the like. And now online entertainment is a lot of people's main source of entertainment. So the entire scene has just changed so much in such a small amount of time. Maybe I'm rambling a little bit here, but all this to say is while I understand on the basic level being told to watch ads is pretty fucking lame regardless of the context behind it. Hindsight's 2020, but I'd say that a better way he could have gone about doing this is simply saying that he's financially struggling at the moment due to the ad blockers and the issues over at Blip TV, and so here's some t-shirts and DVDs and other means of paying him should you want to help out, and probably leave it at that, rather than telling people to turn their ad blockers off. Especially since the site, again, often didn't fucking work when you did have it off. But All that being said, this video could have been way more obnoxious than it actually is, if I'm being real. Plus, according to the video description, it did actually work in getting way more DVD sales, and the people who did want to support him did do just that. So I suppose, unlike his Power Rangers rant, which was made seemingly to throw a tantrum at a bunch of his fanbase for no real good reason, this one was more of an earnest request for help to those who happen to want to, and it did end up working, though not without the endless mockery of the internet forever after. But yeah, I suppose that's it. On to talking about his review style finally now. So, after having watched a few of Linkara's reviews from both the old classic days to the newer ones, while there are a few things that are different, honestly so much of it is the same. They're all a basic rundown of the events of the comic, Linkara making quips, jokes, and observations throughout the video, and the occasional opinions spliced there within. While some of the stuff Linkara points out is interesting and for sure showcases how weirdly chaotic and dumb some of the comics he covers can be, I won't lie, sometimes Linkara's criticisms can kind of come off as the biggest chain of, actually, stuff that I have ever watched. Stuff like pointing out obvious slapstick in a comic book and being like, he would actually be dead if that were realistic. Starts to kind of feel like Linkara doesn't quite understand other comics outside of superhero ones at times. I'm not actually saying that's the case, I'm just saying that's how it comes off. It's a little bit funny maybe once or twice, but when it keeps happening over and over again, it's a little bit silly. I suppose most of these reviews are either kind of funny when there's a random off-tangent thing he says, or when the comic is really fucking weird, him being a great resource of seeing these really off-the-wall and strange comics in general, that probably no one else has ever or probably ever will talk about online. And so him diving into the metaphorical comic garbage bin to showcase these can be pretty amusing and interesting. Other times I found myself admittingly getting quickly bored. I guess it was really dependent on the comic he was reviewing, and some of this is just my own personal preference and interests. As he's gone along, his reviews have slowly gotten longer and longer, but not out of adding more storyline bits, but out of just taking more time to actually analyze the comics and dive into extra context around them, which again I suppose is commendable. But, and I am willing to fully admit this is on me, I cannot for the life of me find it within me to finish most of his videos I've tried watching. Even the ones that seem sort of interesting, there's just something about the way it's all presented, something about the cadence, the way the videos are structured at times, that makes it all feel rather hard to approach. And mind you, I'm someone who is willing to look at a, 8-hour retrospective on a series or a video game or something that I've never played or watched before, just because I assume the person is probably pretty passionate about it, and I'll probably learn something out of the whole thing. It would also work great as background noise, and maybe if I was watching Linkara as background noise, then maybe that would work a little bit better. But seriously, just watching them and focusing in on how they're made and trying to find something more to say about them is proved to be a rather difficult challenge this time around, I must admit. I think a big part of this issue I'm having with them is the constant breaking away from the story to make a quick quip or joke, but often these quips just seem to be a random reference to some other comic or movie or game or something else, and the punchline is, that he referenced something, and that is it. And if you don't get the reference, it's just kind of a weird word salad that means nothing, constantly spat out between the portions where he's talking about the story and analysis of said story, I suppose. And if you do get what he's referencing, it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, don't get me wrong, he can be funny from time to time, and when the actual comic is interesting, it's worth a watch. It's just so often I feel like it's padded with a lot of unfunny jokes and quips, when less I think would be much more in this case. I think the best ones are when he's making an observation about a character choice, or simply mocking something a character did or said, rather than simply making a non sequitur joke all the time. I watched his videos on Delicious in Dungeon attention, and they were kind of funny in spots, and I enjoyed hearing him talk about something I was more familiar with. Though admittingly, when he covers manga, he tends to just cover one chapter. And I get he's doing this mostly because it's usually a Patreon request, but it does kind of make me wish he covered manga more often, or maybe like beyond just the initial couple chapters. For larger stories, I think it would actually be interesting if you would do little retrospectives or just a basic breakdown of his whole thoughts on a whole series. It doesn't need to be a play-by-play of the whole story of every chapter. I'm not asking that. I realize doing that with a manga series versus a comic book is a big ask and would take hours upon hours of time to do. But instead, I think it would be interesting if he, for example, I don't know, did a review on Berserk, share his thoughts, what's his favorite arc and characters, what's some stuff he had to say about it. He could do one on all of Delicious in Dungeon, or really any other one. I just think it's a bit of a missed potential there, since there is clearly an interest in people wanting to see what his thoughts on manga and other stuff is, since he so rarely does it. Another thing I'm sort of surprised he doesn't cover more is general tokusatsu stuff. With how immensely popular his Power Rangers series has been to this very day, them being far and away the most popular things on his channel, it would be interesting to see him cover other stuff in the genre, like Ultraman, Kamen Rider. Hell, why not do a history of Godzilla or Gamera? It's clear of how often he reviews Godzilla comics that he likes the series. I think a history of the Godzilla series from Linkara would unironically be pretty damn good. I guess I'm just sort of rambling here at this point, but still, if Linkara dropped a brand new history series of something of the same genre or spirit of Power Rangers, I think that shit would get people's attention. Regardless though, my overall impression of his comic book reviews is that, at their best, they're pretty funny, entertaining romps through weird and interesting stories that make it easy to see why this series was and is so popular to begin with. And at their worst, they're absolute slogs to get through, filled with bad jokes and boring commentary, in my personal opinion. On the whole, I see why this series is popular and continues to have a dedicated fan base, but on the other hand, it just doesn't have enough there for me to really be all that interested personally. Again, though I do think I might actually be more interested in hearing and learning about these superhero comics if perhaps Linkara made videos about the history of them, kind of covering them in a similar fashion to how he does his History of Power Rangers style videos. Or I guess just makes videos that were a little bit more broad beyond just one comic. But that's just my own thoughts, and clearly he's been at it for years and still has a dedicated fan base, so what the fuck do I know at the end of the day? But I figured I'd at least put forth my ideas and thoughts on why I think most of his videos don't appeal to me personally, and how if they are packaged or delivered differently, I might feel differently about them. Does anyone else feel a similar way about Linkara's videos? Would you watch a History of Godzilla, or an overall thoughts video on manga and other such comics from him? Have you ever even seen his videos up until now? Or did you just watch documentaries and memes about him at this point? No, for real, I'm genuinely curious. Are you a fan of his? Were you at one point and you're not now? What are his best videos he's ever done in your opinion? What are his worst? I really would love to hear back from you guys. At any rate, there's one more stop we need to make before we end this video out. That being the analog horror series Lewis made that managed to capture people's attention of his channel all over again. That being Winter of '83.
The time is now 12 a.m. K83FC now concludes its programming schedule. Channel 83 will resume its broadcast at 7 a.m.
Winter of '83 is an analog horror series about the investigation of people disappearing during a blizzard in Fawn Circle, Minnesota on January of 1983. The story is presented from multiple perspectives, from people's home video cameras, interviews, TV news stations, and the like. If you're familiar with analog horror series, you're sure to kind of know what you're getting into. VHS filters and effects, a story presented via text, voice clips, and ominous glitchy messages. Analog horror is one of those things that I've seen many people grow pretty cynical to for a pretty long time now, probably because there are just so many people creating them, and I guess it kind of oversaturated the market, as they say, and many of them were not so great. I, on the other hand, am not cynical to them at all. I think they can provide an interesting atmosphere, and there's a few analog series that I particularly enjoy a fair bit. I can understand the tropes getting old with people after a while, and there's definitely some pretty shitty ones out there, but as someone who's literally watched over hundreds of slasher films, read hundreds of creepypastas, both good and bad in both of these categories, and the like, horror content, both at its best and its worst, is like comfort food to me, so I rarely tire of it. All that being said, how was Winter of '83? Well, it's pretty decent. Not bad at all. Even pretty damn good in a few ways, I'd say. Since it's easy enough to go and watch it, and it's only about an hour or so long, I suppose I won't spoil everything about it in case you want to go watch it in full. But in essence, people are dying due to something lurking and moving nearly invisibly through a snowstorm, and the mystery and build-up around this is actually quite well done, and had me invested early on. The atmosphere is also really good too, though me happening to have watched it during a particularly cold winter night certainly helped with that a little bit, which I definitely recommend if you happen to be able to watch it. Since it is winter time, maybe it's cold and snowy where you're at, the perfect time to watch it. However, when we do actually get an explanation behind what is causing people to disappear, I'm a little torn on it. On one hand, it's a super creative and interesting concept, and actually one of the cooler ideas for an entity that I've ever heard of, and fairly unique. And what it does to people is also very eerie.
Alan, I'm glad I'm empty. Alan, I love the chill. It's so cold. I'm numb. Spend the rest of your life in winter. I'm so cold. Shiver in all the empty. Share in all the empty. I'm so cold. I'm so cold. I'm so cold. I'm so cold.
But I do think that it's a little over-explained at one point. There's also a whole I am God cliche part that did kind of take me out of it. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean, and if you don't, go watch it and you'll know what I mean. Also, when we get a look at the entity, we only get like a quick glimpse of it near the very end. It's a little underwhelming in my opinion, and I sort of would have preferred if we didn't see it at all, since it actually kind of made me laugh, if I'm being honest. But those nitpicks aside, I do see the hype, and why this analog series caught people's attention. If anything, it proved that Lewis still had a lot of creative ideas in that hit of his. After all these years, I think he should do this kind of thing more often. I think what is notable is that I'm not sure I would have ever guessed that this was made by Lewis if I wasn't directly told so, which I'm actually going to say is a good thing, and that's not necessarily a dig against Lewis or his writing, but mostly because it shows Lewis is capable of surprising people, and that is actually pretty damn impressive. As a content creator that has been doing this shit for almost 17 years, being able to surprise people is definitely a good asset, and a showcase of talent. It's for sure one of the better analog horror series out there that I've seen personally too, so good on him. With that done, I think we've talked enough about Linkara for a fucking lifetime. Between me talking about his novels and his comic book series to this, I think I'm starting to go a little bit Linkara crazy. Lewis, if nothing else, is consistent, and has made well over 700 episodes of his Atop the Fourth Wall series, and has shown no sign of stopping. And like it or not, that dedication has to be admired. Like I said before, we will be visiting the world of Atop the Fourth Wall one more time before this Channel Awesome retrospective is done to cover his film. But for now, I think I've pretty well discussed my thoughts and feelings on his series, and what he had to offer overall. I've been talking about Linkara's stuff for so long that at this point it feels almost weird to finally stop and move on to a different subject in this retrospective. But I also could not be any more excited to finally cover one of the most iconic, controversial, and interesting members of the thatguywiththeglasses.com crew. The one, the only, Spoony. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for watching through this whole super long video. I hope you all enjoyed this deep dive into Linkara and his show's lore, and are ready for the next entry about Spoony, which will be coming sometime very soon actually, as for once we won't have hours upon hours upon hours of lore to sift through. But there will still be plenty, so don't be too disappointed. If you're someone who's watched through all my Linkara vids up until this point, what did you think? Did you enjoy the ride? What's your favorite part? The books? The webcomic? His videos? Let me know. And better yet, besides Spoony, since we already know he's coming next, who's the next person part of Channel Awesome that you're excited for me to cover? Let me know in the comments, or in the premiere chat if you're there. Wink wink. Besides that, look forward to news and updates soon on both the Channel Awesome Retrospective and my other major projects sometime very soon. It feels very cathartic to finally be moving forward with this thatguywiththeglasses.com retrospective, as I know it was technically still going because I was covering Linkara's books and his webcomic and everything, but it just feels like it's been at a standstill for so long covering specifically Linkara. So I'm really excited to move forward into other content creators that can be found there. Oh, while I'm at it, since this video is coming out around Christmas time, I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And if you happen to have any New Year's resolutions, you actually stick to them this time. I also want to take this time to thank all of my supporters on Patreon and my YouTube channel members for continuing to help fund my insane long projects, especially all of you who've been supporting me for almost or well over a year or so at this point. I really fucking appreciate it, including every single one of my night eggs and my night owlets. And a super special thank you to all my great night owls, including Bunzo, Bandan, Somber Devante 06, Jeffrey Robery, and Hex Maniac Hannah. You guys are legends, as are all of my arch owls, including the lovely Leanne Loves Christ, the awesome Ali Elman, the daring Daniel Petrie, the Super Saiyan Star Punch Gaming, the fearless Forgotten Ace, and the Supersonic Sword. Thank you all so very much. And remember, there's now exclusive videos being uploaded to the Patreon and via channel memberships. So if you want to help support this channel too and get early content, be sure to go and subscribe. Next exclusive video will be out before the end of the month. But with all that being said, until next time, this has been Dylan the Night Owl, flying off.